Okay, noting that it's a few minutes after 7 on November 13th, 2019, I'll call the Board of Health meeting to order. We have a variance hearing at 7:30 and a number of items on the agenda to discuss. And then there are also, well, I'll announce that there are some items to be added, or potentially added, as not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of this meeting. So the items are requested letters of support for municipal vulnerability preparedness grants, letter received from Dover Board of Health, fields at Sherborn public water supply approval, and replacement well on Greenwood Street. So, hi Rebecca, any comments on those 4 items and anything else to add to the agenda?
I don't know, but I know I've seen Mark Main and
Yeah.
200 Lake Street. We just got a revised plan yesterday and a second revised plan today. I have no idea. I haven't talked to Mark, but just in case.
Okay, so, and then, so a 5th one would be another tentative for 200 Lake. All right, if no one has anything else to add, do we have a motion to add these 5 items to the agenda?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone else aye? Nays?
Oh,
aye. Okay, so, people so we have two guests, a set of guests, I'm guessing, and then Gino is here for planning board. So, although the other one might interest you, I'm gathering people are probably here to hear about what's happened so far with Jamison Field, since that's on our agenda. Okay. Are you okay with the discussion of that before we get to yours? So that means...
Absolutely, because Sean is supposed to be here.
Oh, all right.
Also, so might as well.
Okay.
He's downstairs.
Okay. All right. So Jamison Field testing, I think it was last Tuesday morning where the test pits were done. So I went there just after they had started digging one of the holes. They hadn't gotten very deep. And 3 pits were put in various parts of the ball field, and that all got done before the rain really started later on in the day. So actually, Sean, did they all get filled in before the rain got too heavy and all the monitoring pipes?
It depends on your definition of heavy rain.
Okay.
They were filled in. It was raining.
Okay, yeah, I left at the right time. I only got a little wet. So, okay, so there were 3 pits. We still don't have the final results back, and actually it would be better if Mark, Mark observed it and went over, discussed, Mark, the health agent, was also there to evaluate the pits with Stan techs who were on site. There were 2 folks, were they both soil evaluators, do you know?
Oh, I'm sure they both are.
Yeah, okay.
Wayne definitely is.
So, and this is what we do all the time when there's testing on a site, is the health agent and whoever the tech is on behalf of the client, in this case it is the town in both cases, look at the pit, evaluate the soils together, and discuss it. So he would have the precise details. So I can say that the pits were dry on that day, but that's not surprising because we're having a particularly dry period. So wells are quite low at the moment. It'd be surprising if we saw something. It's been, for this area, it's been a very dry summer and fall. And so what has to be done from that are groundwater adjustments, and that I don't have yet. I don't know what the adjustment will be. Adjustments are made by looking at USGS, U.S. Geologic Survey wells that are installed throughout the country. You find one in this area that has a similar placement and soil types to where these pits were put in. And since they have decades worth of data from that, they can establish a historical high groundwater. So you compare, they say it's 13 feet off of that high because water levels are low now, and then you apply an adjustment factor to what we observed out in the field. So that, I don't know the result of that. So one of the pits that would apply to, two of the pits had signs of oxidation reduction, so that establishes high groundwater, and I'm not sure the exact measurements of that. I don't know if you remember how deep. I'm guessing, I don't know what the
One of them was too shallow, actually,
measurements.
high groundwater, because it was, one of them was at like 40 inches. That's not redox to high groundwater. That had to be something else.
No, there's a certain type. I did read up to understand that's the one that was closest to the fire station that had quite a lens of
Yeah, it was right below I think the
of
B and
rust,
C.
essentially, all around the pit. And so apparently if it's isolated, it could be something else, but from the soil scientist descriptions I read, that if it's going all the way around the pit, it's probably some level, and it just happens to, for whatever reason, have a deposit of iron there. And as long as there wasn't some sort of weird thing trapping the water, which that didn't appear to have, a very clay layer, something like that underneath it.
It's definitely not
So-
clay layer.
Yeah. It's extremely sandy soils out there, which is great for moving the water fast, not great for cleansing the water, but it will definitely move the water through. So, and then the other one didn't have that distinct layer, but it did have chroma. As Mark was describing, it wasn't the classic dots, but it was smears of color, essentially. So, and that was at a level similar to that, but that's me guessing. I did not measure it. So we'll have more on that, and I guess we'll see the Stantec report. And I want to ask, can we get a chance to look at the Stantec report when it comes in?
Of course.
Okay.
But we're not going to rush into some fictitious groundwater adjustments. There's no rush. We're going to wait for groundwater to come out. The
Okay.
pipes are out there. They're not going anywhere.
Okay. It's just that to get
I would also just say, like, I think
historic high?
fictitious is, like, I don't know that we'd want to say something that is a validated method of how groundwater is calculated is fictitious. Like, we may say we'd rather do direct observation rather than approximation, but I don't know that saying
That's what I'm
something's.
saying.
Yeah, but fictitious isn't saying
Yes.
that. Fictitious is saying this is made up, and I don't think that's how you want to characterize it. Like, I think it's an approximation where you're saying I want an observation because I think it'll be better. I think that's totally viable. I just don't want on our record to be Town of Sherborn's assuming this is a fictitious way to measure it, because I don't think that's what we intend to do.
And if you want to wait until you can get a historic high groundwater,
Spring.
you could be waiting for years, because you would have to find USGS wells that are saying, wow, this is the highest we've ever seen the water, and then take the measurement out there. So,
So I just want to
Wait,
kind of
so-
zoom out a little bit in
Yeah,
overview,
yeah.
just because I feel like I've heard some of these as an audience member at Select Board. There's someone we were talking about the testing, and I just want to make sure I sort of understand the context, but I also feel like for those of you in the audience, that may also be helpful. So the last Select Board meeting that I was at was sort of this discussion of, we kind of wonder what's happening in Jameson. And I think the feeling in the room and with the Select Board was getting data gives us information. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going down this road, but it is better to have information to understand the choices we have or don't have, rather than thinking in the abstract, maybe Jameson would work, maybe it wouldn't. And so this phase of testings with Stantec is the engineering firm that's doing that testing on behalf of the town. There's a set of tests. Mark is observing, not as oversight for that engineering company, but I think the town saying we want to get the most oversight, the most engagement across the board, because I think there are concerns that have been raised, and feeling like the intent for this is for Town of Sherborn to answer questions about its own resources, not necessarily for any specific project, although the conversation started in the context of 41 North Main. I think that we're now at the phase where we're doing that testing. I think your point, Sean, is there's no immediate urgency or emergency to do this. It's how do we get the best information for the testing we're doing? And a piece of that is sort of by proxy with the engineering firm, which I think is your point with the adjusting the groundwater, you feel like there's better ways to get that information, and I think that's the intent, is to get the best information possible. I think it's really easy in a topic that's as layered and loaded as this one can be for people to feel like what's really happening. So I think that what we're saying is this testing's been done. We're supportive of those records being public, which I think I haven't heard anybody who's not supportive of that. I think that's been true across the board. And the pieces we'll need is the engineering firm saying, this is what we saw, this was the depth of model, these were the soil characteristics. And then it's a question of, does that give us the information we need versus, I don't think I totally follow how the pipe observations fit into that. Is that would be supplemental information, or how did those things connect?
I was going to just ask, can you,
Yeah.
because there's no pictures of that, so what was installed after the boreholes
So
were?
there's perforated pipe in each of the holes, and it's wrapped with screening fabric to prevent them from clogging up, and then they're placed into the holes. And do you know how deep they were? Roger said all over 15 feet, but I recall one being 14 feet, some number of inches, so.
I didn't
but
get
I
the
don't know what
exact
they-
depth because I
yeah.
had left before they were
And so,
coming
and then
on.
they backfilled, and then
Yeah,
they,
and then they-
and then,
Yeah, we just left monitor pipes like any other perk hole.
Right.
I had to bury them, they were in the middle of the field, so they're
Right, that's
they're
what I
just
was
below the
gonna-
surface with an iron cap on them, so I
Okay.
can find them with a metal detector.
just like a monitoring well, like,
Yeah.
That-
and
exactly.
so you're going to, basically, they're going to go out periodically and
yeah.
try and gauge the water level. So they can look at that seasonally, they can go out once a month and just do
Right, and I
an
also think
elevation.
if there's heavy rain at some point, it would be good to go out just in case there's some shedding dynamic off the hill, just to see if that shows anything. But the pipes are there, so,
And so the questions we'll answer with the test holes are, where is groundwater and what are the soil characteristics?
right. And the modeling is always considered, or oxidation reduction, it shouldn't be model. It's that
No, but the
kind
but
of
the
a
pipes
standard
don't tell you
term
about the
used.
soil. They tell you about the water. The soil observations were done when they
Yeah.
When they're
installed
physically digging the hole.
And they're
Okay.
making visual observations of, like Daryl said,
Right.
either strata or redox or modeling.
Right, and they
But
measure
once they're
that.
in, it's about the water level.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So they measure the layers, they decide where they are, they agree while they're out there together as a group. There's a chart for looking at soil color, and they, try to evaluate the
regulation-
grain size and things like that, and then they describe that and
Like a log.
identify
Did they,
soils, yeah.
it should be in the report, so they should have like a little boring log or, from the hole that says, from 0 to 3 feet, we saw tan sand with this kind of grain size, and then,
Which is what we see, just so you know, on all of the septic system plans that we receive. They always have a diagram that talks about the holes. They're usually lined up next to one another. Here's the A layer here. Oh, the A layer in the other pit was a little deeper. So it's all that information is included on a septic plan. So it's standard operations. What else was I going to say?
And I don't know the details of the fire station system, but it's mounded, so that would certainly suggest that at least when that system was being designed and built,
shallow.
there was
Yeah,
something
the-
shallow.
Right, the one that's close to there was showing that too, with that very distinct oxidized band. So, anyway, so do people have questions? Because,
I have
right,
one
I
point of
dove into
clarification, though.
the weeds pretty quick, because I'm
A
in.
comment about 41 North Main. The testing in Jameson
Is, I think,
has
independent
been
of that.
discussed for decades.
Okay,
41 North Main was still a working farm when they started talking about the testing. in
Okay.
Jameson. So,
It's
Thanks for
not
adding that, Sean.
related to
although
that
it-
development?
you
it was
know,
this piece of
it
the
came up
conversation, it's part of a long,
recently.
yeah, that's
It
really helpful,
certainly
thanks,
has been
Sean.
questionable, or questioned,
Okay.
what's out in the field, what's there. So this data has been desired for quite a while.
Yeah, and when we look at, I guess the context I'm used to us, like having test pits that we dug was in, here's a very specific layout of a proposed field. This is a little different in that we're saying, we're sampling
Exploratory.
different points in the field to kind of say, let's understand, let's do this once,
Right.
get the firm, understand the layout, as opposed to, here's a system, it will be a big, we're gonna test 1, 2, 3. This is sort of
Yes,
exploration.
understanding the conditions.
You still
Okay.
need all that,
Yeah,
certainly. I mean,
I
I
think
was
it's-
strategic about where I wanted to dig a hole in
Yeah.
the middle of a baseball diamond.
Yeah.
Assuming that not much will change, but there's a lot more testing that we need to have
yeah.
before anything else.
So, okay, well, first,
Lanny Rubin, 26 Oak Street. Assuming that it passed the perk test, what stages of approval would remain for its actual use?
If it is actually something that is going to be a wastewater treatment plant of this scale that has been discussed, which would be over 10,000 gallons a day, that's a DEP
Not us.
requirement. Now, given that the town's going to own, operate, whatever the thing is, have the responsibility and the liability for its operation, I think the town will get involved in what performance is expected of it.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that that is assured that the town would get a right to approve whether this
I mean, it's
use.
a town's land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Town's land, town's expense, town's
As
duty.
voters,
It's a
I would
very
certainly presume
long-term
so, yeah.
responsibility with, I mean, you can hire firms to help manage it for you, but in the end, it's,
But in terms of
It's on the
gatekeepers, I
town,
think the
so.
other piece is like, this wouldn't be something that needed a specific Sherborn Board of Health permit or hearing to do. It would be the question of the town pursuing funding for it or whatever the funding stream is, the decision-making about the various kind of land ownership questions. So I think we would be involved as a content board, but there's not something that you'd say, we have to give you permit X for you to build this system, because that regulatory piece is all through the state.
oh, yes.
So that was a perfect question. Now mine is, if it is going to be a public wastewater treatment plant, what are the requirements in terms of the soil? How do they differ from our requirements?
So it would be state-level regulations, but again, if we're going to own it and design it and operate it, then who knows what that will come out to be. But one has to apply for a groundwater discharge permit, which I've actually prepared for other clients. So it's doing similar things, looking at the soil conditions, groundwater issues, of course. You have to look at what other water supplies nearby might be affected, but it requires that one includes in the analysis any public water supplies nearby. So that might be for Pine Hill School or that sort of thing, but it would not include the private homes. So again, we may want to consider what effect it may have on private wells, again, as a town, but that's something that's a policy decision that would have to be made.
But does
So-
the DEP have a separate, I mean, we're talking about.
They have a whole-
Three
The whole
10-foot dry pits require
I think-
40-inch per grade. What is the DEP's requirement for a system?
It's based on
This
capacity,
point?
it's not like a one size.
They don't
fits all.
have a,
Well, it depends on what the plant design is and the planned capacity too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's
not-
similar
well, how do they
to,
design a plan without information?
okay, so there are two steps. If it's something that's that large, there's a set of regulations that govern how the wastewater treatment plant should be designed, what features, what kind of quality of effluent it has, monitoring requirements for that, and that then coupled with that, so that's one set. Who can operate it? What level of certification do the operators have to have? How many hours a day do they need to be there? That kind of thing. So that's on the treatment plant side. And then for the discharge from the treatment plant, if we're on a river, it might discharge into a river, and that's an NPDES permit for that kind of discharge. But for this, it would be a groundwater discharge permit. And then you do studies that say how much water, where's it going to go, what directions are going to flow, what concentrations are likely to reach well X. They have, not too long ago, a few years ago, made the requirements more stringent and looked at travel time of contaminants. So you need to determine how fast the groundwater is flowing so that from your discharge to a public water supply, how many months have lapsed, and they have more rigorous standards for the quality of the effluent if it's less than 2 years, and then if it's less than 6 months. So, so it's a,
So it's sort of, there really aren't requirements as we have requirements.
I don't think that's a fair characterization at all. I think
Yeah,
there's
there
tailored
are
requirements.
similar-
but
Many,
it
many
says
requirements.
There's not a blanket requirement of every wastewater treatment
Yeah.
plant requires exactly the same minimum criteria. I think it's, you know, or going to the state to say, this is my specific plan and context, but I don't think you can say, oh, it's 5 holes that are 60 inches. I don't think that's the level.
Yeah, it's, there are some similar things, but it's a more involved process. Certainly the analyses that need to be done to get the
Wouldn't we have?
groundwater discharge permit.
Wouldn't we have jurisdiction over the protecting the private wells that
No.
are others?
And if people wanted more information, how would they get it? So if
It's-
you,
It's mass.gov. If you look up, there's a whole discussion about wastewater treatment plants, and then there's types of treatment plants. So there's graded wastewater treatment plants, there's graded municipal wastewater treatment plants, industrial. So there's a wealth of information, I think, if you're really interested. But, so the design process, so it's iterative. It's like, first, the town would need to figure out, okay, is this even an okay spot to even contemplate something like that? That's what the stage we're in now, the exploratory, like understanding the conditions. Is this even a potentially viable sort of spot? Then things like capacity and understanding, well, who would be even, you know, connected to this? What kind of capacity, what kind of discharge would be happening? Then you work with a designer that would help come up with making sure that all the regulations and requirements are being met for building the plant and the treatment. And then, like Darryl was saying, then there's the whole discharge piece of it too. So it's a multi-step process. It's not just like, you know, the Wild West or anything. So there are a lot of checks and balances the way it's set up.
And then, to me, how the town gets involved are things like how robust is the system. For example, if you can have a lot of storage that can hold several days' worth of discharge into it, that could give you some level of protection if some pumps go out.
Fail.
Or something catastrophic happens and the plant can't function, because without that kind of storage, you're discharging somewhat untreated stuff into the ground, or you're trucking it at enormous expense to somewhere else. So there are so many decisions to make along the way about what you want to see that plant have and abilities. And so I don't know how to abbreviate it too much, but let's take some other questions and then, okay.
Yeah, John Garrison, 33. One thing I heard you say, which surprised me, was the DEP wouldn't consider any impact on private wells, and
Right.
neither would our Board of Health.
No, we didn't say that. We
So-
didn't say that the board wouldn't consider. If this is a town-run system, I think I would imagine that the town would want the Board of Health to make sure
yeah.
that there wasn't going to be an adverse impact to private wells in the area. Just because the state regulations don't address it, doesn't mean that we as a town would not choose to do that.
but that'd be us giving advice to town as opposed to us as independent regulars saying,
Yeah.
this board in town said we're doing it. Board of Health wouldn't be able to overlay and say, slow motion, no, you're not doing it. This would be sort of a subject matter expertise.
And something to discuss with-
Consider that.
It's not currently a requirement.
Well, it may not be a requirement, but I don't think they or the engineers would be doing their due diligence to
No,
allow that system, design that system.
Right.
200 feet.
I don't think we
septic.
would ever let that happen.
Right.
Right,
That
but,
wouldn't
so
be-
I think the concern you raise is Board of Health has no free-ranging oversight over this independent of the larger conversation of the town of Sherborn. The town of Sherborn would be making exceptionally poor choices to say, we've got it next to an elementary school, it looks like it's not gonna work very well, but we're gonna roll with it. We've got this guy from Flint, he's gonna put it in, it's gonna be so good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been out of it for a while, so there's no connection with 41 North Main or the Zabarski thing as there was at one time. These things seemed attached, but now they're totally disattached.
So I would say, I don't know that we're the best board
Yeah,
to ask
that's-
that. So I
that's,
think that I've attended it in the audience on other boards' hearings, but we're not the ones who I think are best equipped to say what's the current status. I think the last board meeting that I was at was when the select board was discussing the contract with Stantec to say, we're doing this, and the intent was to say, spend our money to do the assessment, because if you spend another fellow's money, it's tough to be your shop. And so I think that was the last I heard, but there may be new information.
Okay, so there's no commitment by anybody to use this facility, assuming it's built?
No, I think they just want to know, is it even possible to put it on the field, since that seems to be where
Because if it's not possible, then.
plans were headed, and
We need to know that.
Right, if it's not
There'll be
possible,
an informal survey of who would be interested in
Right.
attaching to the system.
right.
yes.
Jay Somerville, 24 Hunting. Carol, you mentioned the figure of 10,000 gallons a day. Was that contemplating just a town center system, if you will? Or did that include what Levarsky had said would come from his?
Okay, so, no, it would be more, I was saying that 10,000 gallons and above is overseen by the state. That's why the Board of Health is not the approving body, that's the line, and above that, a whole other set of requirements and regulations apply.
We know 41 North Main is way over that.
Right.
What would, has there been any estimate of what just a town center system would
Okay,
produce?
so in the past, but I don't know if these numbers have been updated since I last heard them, which was a lot of years ago, could have been 10 years ago at this point, that water use or septic system capacity in the downtown area was 30,000 gallons a day. That's the number that floated around then. I don't know if it's been refined since then. I think what 41 North Main mentioned was 20,000 a day, perhaps?
I think their proposal also had something that, I mean, this was at like one of the water board meetings, but it was also like modules. They're like, we'll put this chunk on and we'll put this chunk on. So I've heard lots of different estimates for the various versions of that project that have been floated. We've got this dementia unit, we've got this, we've got that. It's bigger, it's smaller. I've
Right,
heard
and that was
everything
at some
had at least like
version of
4 or
the
5 sets of
plans going
zeros,
on.
but the first number changed.
So at a minimum,
So it's
for the town,
more than
we're
10.
talking, yeah, talking like 30,000. You're talking for emergency purposes, tanks that would hold 2 days of effluent, 60,000 gallon tanks.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard to do.
Yeah, you're not gonna do it. And then you add on whatever might happen at 41 North Main, and it gets even more absurd.
Well, I think also, I mean, I think the other issue that's been raised is where do you draw that dividing line? So if I'm the house that's one past, the end of the wastewater treatment district and my septic goes and I'm now putting a new system in, why can't I just hook up? I'm
Right.
10 feet past the line. I think those questions, like I think the piece that I think our goal here is to say, this is the piece of the puzzle that we represent. So that's clear, because I think people have questions and there's parts of it that's confusing, and, who's doing what and what does this mean is hard. And it's also like, again, like a small town moving quickly, like we've talked about this for a lot of months to get to this point to do the testing, but then it can be hard as you're like, this is the 7 o'clock meeting, this is that 8 o'clock meeting, which piece is which part. And so I think the goal for tonight is to kind of say, this is the piece that we know, because I know people have questions and it's an appropriate place to raise it and share the information that we have. From my standpoint, this is really discovery and understanding. I think that there's then like 1,000 things we need to talk about as a town. For what does a wastewater treatment district mean for us? What are the implications for 40Bs now that you say, I've got a system, can I restrict you deciding to hook up your 40B to it on this parcel that's right next to it? The 41 North Main has all of its own questions. Like, I think there's so many things that are outside of this that are much bigger conversations about what does going down this road look like, that I don't want to confound the two and say, this is all the due diligence that I as a, one Mill Street would want to see done. I think this is just us saying, it's Board of Health, this is what we know so far, so you guys can know it too and talk about it and hear about it.
Andrew Sylvia, 3 Elliott Street. The testing wells that were put into place there was comments about taking measurements from them in the future. Who is it that conducts those future measurements?
So Stantec is planning to come out, was my understanding. Is that correct? And then Mark and I talked about Mark going out, and also, since he's right here, at times, we could also
Yeah,
get
they
out.
coordinate that, 'cause I gotta dig them up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, did you put the metal covers to grade for the monitor
yeah,
pipes?
because-
No, I can't put them to grade, they're in the field, they're just below grade.
Oh,
Okay, so you would have to get them ready whenever Stan Tech decides to read them, we should do it all together.
Yeah, right.
So you're not digging up twice. Yeah, I didn't know if you were going flush, I thought you were going flush to grade, but that's not a problem, we can get you out there.
Yeah, I mean, the two of them are in the clay of the field, so we, you know,
Still
we
playing
dig that
ball?
twice a week for
I
baseball.
don't think so.
What's that?
You still playing ball right now?
No,
So you may want to leave them uncovered for access through the winter.
No, you don't want to leave
No,
it
I'm not
covered.
leaving them
Don't
covered.
leave
So
it
I
on-
don't think that, okay, I get it.
you don't want me to find a bunch of rocks in the ball.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it, Sean, I get it. I've seen it happen before.
It's
You
a preferential pathway, you don't want to leave them
I'm not falling for that tree.
So I just want to be, I just want
I'll
to
dig
be,
it up.
Yes.
I just want to be
That's fine.
cognizant of
They're
time
easy
because
enough
we've
to
got
find. That's why I
7:30.
used iron lids too, so we can just find
Well,
them.
that's why I thought you usually, I saw the iron and I thought you were going to put them flush, but that's fine.
Okay, so
That's fine.
we have 2 minutes before a hearing, so we could pick this up again, but there will be a break. So any other burning questions at the moment? Oh, no? So-
And so when we get those reports, those would be public records from Stan. The Stan Tech reports would be
Oh.
public records.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. Yeah, I would think so. It's on
Yeah.
behalf of the town. Did they give you a estimate about when they would be providing that?
We were too busy thrashing to get out of the mud.
Okay.
I haven't talked to them since then.
Okay, did
I
they
know they were
mention
gonna look up the
ER?
wells and get back to Mark on,
Well, we should be checking those between the 22nd and the 29th of each month, depending on what month they would like to check them, up till April 29th, so.
Oh, no, did
Uh,
they say when they're going to get
The
their
initial
write-up
report.
of
Yeah,
the
they should, they're
evaluation?
required to have their soil reports to us within 30 days.
Okay,
That's a requirement in Title V. I'm sorry.
Yeah, except
But this is in
it's a
Title
little
Five.
outside of,
Yeah.
Well, this is
Those
Title
requirements.
V, even if it's a different format outside of our regulations. They're
Oh.
required as soil evaluators
Oh, okay.
to have that report
Even,
in the
even
office.
for public
Yeah.
wastewater.
all right,
Yep,
so within 30 days.
because they did soil
Hopefully less.
evaluation of the code.
That's fair.
So that's
Okay.
fine. They should be getting that to me soon.
And you might be out there testing some wells before then, depending on the date that you choose. Okay. All right. Well, if anyone thinks of any other questions, send them to us. And
Go on Main Street.
maybe we'll address it next week, too. So, okay. Okay, so we have a variance hearing for,
Yeah.
oh, yep.
Who chose Stantec? Was that at your advice that they are being used, or
I
was it the
was
select
away,
board?
so for the summer, I'm not sure, for a good part of the
We
summer.
didn't hire them, they weren't hired through the
No.
board.
No, I know you
Yeah.
didn't hire them, but
Yeah.
how were they chosen? Were you?
I don't, I mean, I think, I can't answer what somebody else did in a reliable enough way to say,
Yeah.
this is what somebody, like, we
Must
didn't
have been
hire
a
them, so
discuss
I.
at a board, right? Select board?
Do you know? Yeah.
Were you asked for your advice?
We did an RFP, sent it to 3 firms, 2 responded. Stantec has done work for the town previously, and they had the better proposal, so we selected them.
So that was the planning board that did that?
Well, it was a committee, including the planning board chairman.
All right, 209 South Main.
Okay, so, all right, so we have variance hearing and engineer, hello, and are there any abutters? Okay, but even if not, anyone who'd like to come up and watch as the engineer explains reasons for requested variances and are all the green cards in?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Good evening, Dan McIntyre, representing the homeowners, Hope and Dudley Baker. The Bakers are in the unfortunate circumstance of having a failed cesspool, so we were obtained to design a new septic system for them. This is South Main Street here. Snow Street is just up the road a little bit. It's an older 3-bedroom home with a cesspool in the front yard. well in the backyard. The abutters wells are also in the backyard. And then we located a well across the street. So we're limited to really putting it back in the same location as the cesspools in the front yard. It's a high groundwater table, about 30 inches, relatively slow perk rate of 20 minutes per inch. So we're going in with an alternative technology, the Elgin true textile sand filter, in order to keep the mounding down to a minimum. Given the tight quarters here, if we went into the conventional system with a mound, we would have issues drainage back toward the house, as well as trying to keep drainage off the neighbor's property and off the street. So with the alternative technology, we can come in with a fairly decent system that avoids those issues.
Okay.
So we are asking for a couple of variances to the Sherborn regulations and one waiver to Title V.
Okay, and they're all related to the ground level. So, Mark, before we ask questions, do you have any particular comments on
No,
this?
just so the board knows, I think Dan did a good job explaining the need for it. And I would ask until we change our regulation.
Yeah, hold on, we can't hear. Shh. Hi, sorry. Okay.
All set, please? Sorry.
Yeah, carry on. Couldn't hear what you were saying.
I probably couldn't hear myself. What was I talking? Anyways, Dan was designing this and obviously just explaining this and drainage issues. We had a discussion again, just so he could remind me what we've done in the past. We have looked at our definition under 1.2 for leaching beds, and it says a system shall be pressure dosed. He's dosing the system with pumps. We need to someday define what we mean by either dose or by distribution. The actual soil absorption system, which is the Elgins, is not being distributed with a dose. So as Dan and I were discussing down the road with regulation review, I think the board's intent was to say pressure dosing or pressure distribution. They are a little different, and I agree with Dan. And I told Dan, no matter what, I would have suggested the waiver. But in this case, it's not here based on the previous reviews we had. But I would say in our next regulation review, we get that better defined. Because it, in turn...
There is a difference between pressure dosing and pressure distribution.
Right.
Your regs say pressure dosing. Pressure dosing is using a pump, pumping up to a distribution box as a large dose, and then the distribution box delivers it by gravity to the system.
Okay.
Pressure distribution is where there's no D-box, and we basically pressurize the field. All the lines get the same amount of effluent.
I see.
And talking to Mark, I think that's your intent.
Yes, so we need to change our code.
Yeah, and we have noted that before.
But
And those definitions are in Title V as well. So.
at the same time, even if there is a discrepancy between the wording, I would have suggested it be approved based on the fact that the drainage is an issue on this site, and he has to confine the system. And he's using an Elgin system, which is better than in respect to a leaching bed filled in with stone and the base filling up with the effluent and forming a biomat. This would be a little different based on the treatment. So I wouldn't have a problem one way or the other, but the plan doesn't have the waiver based on this discussion, just for the record.
But if, and pleasure, we always put our disclaimer in the butter notification that any additional variances to town regulations in Title V as the board may require or deem appropriate. We always put that in our notice, so if you feel like you want to add this in there for consistency, we don't have an issue with that.
It's up to the board. And
I'm trying to remember, because I know we have looked at this
Yes,
a number of times. We know that, right, the intent and also what's consistent with this technology and how it tends to be implemented, so.
When Dan brought this to our attention previously, prior to that, we were requiring pressure dose systems to be part of, if you had a leaching bed, you wouldn't need a waiver. If you didn't have pressure dosing, rather, if you had pressure distribution, you wouldn't need the waiver or dosing, respectively, we look at it. But other engineers, prior to this discussion on one of your past plans, were requesting a waiver from section 1.2. To make it clean, I I would recommend the waiver, but,
Okay.
well, it's loud. But it's up to them.
So what do folks think?
I'd rather give a waiver we didn't really need to than miss a waiver we might have need to give.
Anybody else?
I think that makes sense.
All right, and for those who can't see, this is one of the classic, it's a pre-existing property. Once you draw the setbacks from the on-site and neighboring wells, it's left with a small part of the property to put a system into, and so this one also looks like it's at the higher end of the swath that could qualify. It's at the higher end, so I assume that's at least somewhat better probably than the lower. I doubt groundwater is going to change that rapidly across that kind of distance, or with that slope. So, okay, so we'll go through the requested waivers plus the one that we've identified, and certainly ask any other questions that you think of as we go along. So do we have a motion to grant a variance to 8.01, which pertains to groundwater offset to be 5 feet, and this is...
This is the DEP approval of this system allows a groundwater reduction down to 2 feet.
2 feet. And that has been...
Beats a failed cesspool.
We're asking for a 3-foot reduction of local regulation.
Okay, so you're providing 2 across the entire system? Okay, do we have that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next one is its companion. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to 8.02? So there's just depth to groundwater, 5 feet below grade, very tightly linked with the prior.
Yeah,
So it's a fine point on the perspective.
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And just so the board knows, that was based on models, which is your most conservative approach.
And do we have a section?
Section
Thank you.
1.2, favorite section. It's hidden because it's under builder's responsibilities is the title of it, and it's for a leaching bed. Bed is being proposed for the soil absorption system, and a waiver from 1.2 would be recommended. I would recommend that you approve that waiver.
Okay, so do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 1.2?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then there's a local upgrade, Title V local upgrade waiver requested. So do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 15.40518? And this has to do with the offset to groundwater again. And the issue here is that, again, this is an innovative alternative technology that's approved to have 2 feet to groundwater. And that's a state level approval process, so.
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So do we need Dan to add that additional waiver
I can
to the
add
letter?
plans,
Or the,
or I
just
can
like hand?
Update, I would suggest the letter be updated, and when we do the pre-con and distribute the plans, we can add it to it.
Just because I think it would be awful
We
to
can
be
write it in
inconsistent,
at
so.
that time.
Okay.
But just one change, I
Yeah.
don't see it change it, and we can write it in
Okay, so
with your authority.
close the hearing, and are the plans ready for approval?
Yes, they're ready for approval, conditional to deed recordings for both the garbage disposal and the innovative alternative technology being utilized.
Okay, and then maybe for the as-bills or whatever the next iteration,
Yeah,
this
you can add it to
additional
it. That's fine.
waiver can be added?
When he has final.
Yeah, I'll formally add it to the as-built, and during construction, we'll make sure it's on there so it rains.
Okay, all right. So do we have a motion to approve the plan subject to receipt of the 2 deed recordings as noted by Mark?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Darrell, if I can ask, Dan, if you don't go too far, okay, because this might be related to what you're doing. 45 Greenwood, an emergency well request came in. Let me do this so Joe can pick me up. Came in as an emergency well replacement. I think it was yesterday. It has been reviewed. I reviewed it last night, and I'm recommending approval, but Dan's here. He's the engineer who did the plan, and I can put the plan out. This house you're gonna see again because they have to replace their septic system. Dan's doing something a little different, which is kind of like he's showing what's required and what's proposed for the well location, is the old well, the present well location, which will be abandoned as noted on the plan. And this is the proposed location of the septic system, correct? Dan?
Right, we'll be coming in a month from now for the approval on the septic, but during the process of transferring the house, the well was tested. They found some contamination. So the recommendation was to build a new well rather than trying to.
Was it bacterial?
Yes, but that's what she told me.
I just want to make sure that we know about what, when you say contamination.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was bacterial net? Yeah. Yes. So they were told the well company to not drink the water, so they found the bottled water, and hence the emergency to get the well drilled.
Okay.
So we located, in conjunction with the well driller, to get this truck in convenient spot, we located the well over here, outside the pavement. The existing well was actually in the pavement, which may have been part of the issue.
Oh, okay.
But the other benefit of moving the well is when we get to the septic system,
You'll have
we have
greater distance.
Okay. That's good, and it looks like, okay, so.
How deep?
Okay.
Do you know how deep you're proposing to install?
Nobody knows that.
The average can be
Do you know what
anywhere
the
from
current one
300 to
is?
1,000.
Do you know the depth of the current well?
We don't, Dover pump replaced the pump 19 years ago, and they just know the horsepower, they couldn't tell me how deep it is.
Okay.
It's the original well from 1956.
Could
I
be.
mean, if it
Probably
has
not.
bacterial, it's probably
Yeah.
shallow, so.
Yeah.
Well, the seal's not the greatest.
And it is in the driveway, so.
Good point.
Okay, so do we have, you are recommending?
I'm recommending approval. I
Okay.
was just glad Dan was here, so in case you had any
No, this is
questions.
good. Time is of the essence for this. So do we have a motion to approve as well?
So moved.
Second. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, believe it or not, we had another last minute. I feel like we're the Federal Express here. We have another item for the agenda if you so wish to put it on. It's 200 Lake Street. 200 Lake Street is for new construction. It's both for a well and a septic system. It's up to the board.
So can I just ask a
Yeah,
clarifying
I-
question? Just if we have other folks who are here for the
Yeah.
Jameson Fields, I'd love to close that out so they can not be here. If they don't need to be, not that, yeah. Does that sound
Oh,
okay?
and you know what? Before we move on to that, since it just came in, we have our guests from DPW and Planning Board who
Yeah.
we need to attend to as well. So
Yeah.
we have,
I wasn't disrespecting, I'm just.
Yeah.
yeah,
For the
Yeah.
agenda.
yeah.
Yep.
Oh, we did add it.
We added it,
when-
Mark.
Before you were here, so.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ellen.
Okay, so you can take over with James. I'm going to.
So I think just, we sort of had to end abruptly for the hearing. Are there other questions for the Jameson Field testing that people wanted to have answered? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think that our topic is closely related to
Yeah, yeah.
that, so.
Lovely segue.
Good segue going
Yeah.
forward, and they may be
Yep,
interested in
that sounds perfect.
hearing about that as well.
Yeah, so the other topic I know less about for Gino and Sean in terms of, do we need to introduce Daryl or?
Yeah, well, you know what? You're going to be really introducing it to us, so everyone can hear your, since we've just read the email, which was very brief. And other than that, I don't remember us knowing about the, what is it called, MVP?
Correct.
Yeah, we didn't, did anyone else know? I didn't know about
No,
its
I mean, I didn't know about it
existence
till
now.
I saw the
So,
email.
Okay, well, for some background.
That would be perfect.
yeah, that would be great.
It's called the municipal.
Oh, yes, good idea. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Gino.
Okay, about a year and a half ago, the state established a program called Municipal Vulnerable Preparedness Program. And what it is it provides funding for climate resiliency. And it's modeled sort of after green communities, where first you have to be designated, and then once you're designated, you become eligible for grant funding. So we became designated a year and a half ago. We were among the first towns. We had, some of you might remember, we had a workshop in this room where we went over maybe flooding problems and wildfires and other things. You were, something like, it seems like you would have been there, but I guess you weren't. Yeah, Ellen was there. Okay, Sean was there.
Oh, was it during the day? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So anyway, based on that, on having gotten that designation, we're now eligible for the program. We weren't ready last year when it was also available, but Sean and I have been working with the consultant on actually 2 applications. One to study, again, more background. About 6 years ago, we looked at the possibility of smart sewer project for the town center. And at the time, we didn't pursue it, but anyway, so the 2 applications now, one would look at smart sewer, but not, it focuses on smart sewer, but it'll generate information that would be useful whether we go with smart sewer or not. Example being, it's going to look at alternative sites for a leaching facility besides Jameson Field. It might do some follow-up on Jameson as well. And it focuses a lot on the economics of a smart sewer system, which is something that was a big concern the last time. The second one focuses on a public water supply. Again, looking at sites, looking at economics, and that sort of thing. So it'll generate additional information, not tied to any projects, just they're both consistent with the new master plan, which called for further investigation of these things to serve the town center. And so we would just like to ask for a letter of support to go with the application, which is due tomorrow. And we apologize for all this late last minute information. A lot of it we just got ourselves in the last few days, including right up till this afternoon. So the request is simply to approve a letter of support to submit these applications.
Which I was nice enough to do
Oh.
on your letter.
What is a smart sewer system?
The concept of smart sewer is, one, it does a higher level of treatment, so that the discharge is, of a higher level. It also, it combines sewer treatment, and it'll accept septage waste and food waste, and generate electricity from it. So it's like, and it has to be for a limited area. That's the only way it works. That's the whole concept is, it's for areas that have a particular need, and it's not to be spread. So that's the
So is this
essence of
with the downtown in mind?
Oh yes, the downtown center is the focus of it. Yeah.
That was what the study was before. It financially did not seem to work for Sherborn. We didn't have a big enough flow for the kind of the threshold level investment you need to make, was the general sense
That's
of
right.
what I recall. And also to get the energy benefits to generate biogas from it, you need food waste from supermarkets or restaurants and things like that to add to the wastewaters and whatever part of the process. So that there are new regulations that require management of over a certain amount of food waste to go to composting or something else, not straight into the garbage any longer. So there is some motivation for firms to do that, but are they going to contract at the time? It wasn't well established, and
Right.
whether they would want to contract with a smaller town who sometimes maybe could receive the waste, didn't have capacity to receive any amount or fluctuating amounts. So there were just some things that made it seem not as applicable here. A lot of the study was based off of work that was going on in Littleton, but there's just a much larger set of development going on there at the time, so it was a bigger system, so it just had kind
Yeah,
of more.
but since then, Littleton has
possibilities.
proceeded with their projects.
Yeah. No, and they have a
I know it's
large
much
kind
bigger.
of commercial parks and things like that.
Yeah.
What is
And
the
a more
water
developed
piece of
downtown.
the study of the request?
Again, just looking at potential sources and well sites and the finances mostly.
Is this the same system that the Charles River Watershed was promoting? I don't think it's.
Smart sewer is, yes.
Yeah, because I mentioned this to the board a couple of years ago, that's being used in downtown Boston by the MGH to manage their waste. Is it the same one?
I don't know about that system, but it is Charles River Watershed. In
Yeah,
fact,
so it's the
they're a
same one.
sub-consultant to our consultant.
I guess one question I had, so I think you guys had circulated the letter beforehand, and the sort of first sentence of the letter is, Department Office supports the Town of Sherborn's application for MVP Action Grant 20. We commit to supporting this project. So I just want to be clear on, we say we commit to supporting, what am I committing to supporting?
Just the study.
Okay.
Just the study. Funny you mention that, though, because in the application itself, when I reviewed it, they had a similar line about committing to proceed with the project. I said, got to take that out. We just
Okay.
want the information, and then we'll decide.
I would want to see, frankly, participating in, only because when I read down below, climate change threats from both flooding and drought have already affected
Yeah, I was
Title
wondering.
V systems
Is that based on data? I mean, have
and
you?
drinking water wells. So droughts have clearly affected wells, which we've noted. Again, I don't know, was it a consultant who did this? Because
Yes.
nobody
Yeah,
spoke
they
to
wrote that.
us about stuff. So I'd be curious, what they're basing it on. I'm not saying that drought, but I'm curious about the flooding affecting systems in what particular way are they noting that? So that goes back
There's
to,
evidence
I'd want to
of
be
conflicts.
involved in this, have the Board of Health, because I don't think anyone deals with water and wastewater more than the Board of Health, so.
I think that this is due tomorrow.
I
Yeah,
think.
but we could change the wording.
Yeah, I was going to say, to say it has already affected, I actually don't know the
No, and
veracity of that
I might
statement.
cross that out.
Yeah, you
So
can take
I
that out,
think
that's
that we
fine.
should
I
modify
thought we
that.
actually, I reworded that in the draft, and I
Oh.
don't, it might still be sitting on my computer.
Yeah.
I don't think you have the final version.
But Ellen has copies and things ready that we can edit.
So,
Because Diane Moore sent us the templates, so.
It certainly could, though, affect the system. So I think if you
Could, but-
made it more prospective.
do we disagree with both?
There was a
the-
couple
yeah.
sentences like that I rephrased, but I
Yeah.
have a working copy that I was trying to change that, and I
So-
don't think you got it.
And does only Daryl have to sign it ultimately?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
could
as long as
vote
you
to.
vote.
Yeah. So I wouldn't want, I'm just always hesitant to say I support something I haven't seen, I
Right.
don't, but I would be totally, I'm supportive of the idea and participating in the project, but I don't want to say, yep, totally signed off. I saw a letter saying it's good stuff. I feel like we do have a piece of responsibility here, although I think more information serves us collectively well, and if there are people who will give us the money to get that information, that's certainly more appealing than paying for it myself. And
That's
so I
the
think
idea.
that idea certainly seems reasonable, but again, I think I just want to be cautious, the supporting word feels tricky to me, is that where other folks are at, or is that just
Yeah.
my own neuroses?
Hold on, so I'll tell you what I
Just
just.
historically, I
we
don't
could-
know of any wells downtown that have failed through the droughts we've had.
Oh, I mean, we definitely, I feel
Yeah,
like
so
we
we
definitely
definitely
had
need to
one.
reword.
Yeah, how about, instead of we commit to supporting, we are supportive of the research effort and want to participate in the process?
Perfect.
That sounds
Perfect.
good. And then you'll modify that.
And then down below
Paragraph.
that, climate change threats from both flooding and drought, you mentioned could affect,
Yeah, right.
okay? The goals of the smart sewer include building sustainability, open to replenish local.
I mean, this is written very boilerplate for a much larger town, like it's like
Also-
we don't really have landfills in the middle of our town center and,
In terms of climate resiliency, just to let you know, there is discussion about more distributed systems, which we have. So things like we see where our water is coming from the western part of the state and then supplying the eastern part of the state and then being dumped into the ocean is not the model that everyone in the water utility community is talking about any longer because things like the Ipswich River has dried up. So, so bigger centralized systems may or may not. I don't think it's a predictable conclusion of a report that this will involve smart sewering. I think that's the part to be determined as to what will support what and how,
Exactly.
and how does it feed into the water cycle and make us more resilient as a town, which, you know, right now we are pretty much keeping all of our water and wastewater within the town boundaries as best we can, but
Yeah, one aspect of this, the smart sewer portion of this,
I don't get too serious.
and part of it is because it's sort of a follow-up to what we did before. What we did before was like at a 30,000-foot level, and this will bring it to a 20,000-foot level.
Okay.
But it doesn't commit us, but it's something innovative that the state may be more interested in funding than a more conventional study. So that was kind of the hook behind it.
No, I like the idea, all the things mentioned above about the type of information to be gathered is, I think would be helpful. Okay.
And your support is limited to the funding for the research.
Yeah, not
Well, we
any
want-
We're not
construction.
advocating for.
Right, well, we just, again, I think we just
But
want, I think that's important to me, because I think I am totally happy to learn more, and I think we're best served by getting information, particularly if there are alternative funding streams, but I'd really want to have an open conversation that's not, we signed a letter at point A and said, you know, we're on board, or even gave the appearance of that.
To make sure that for, you know, that it's not so narrow to only look at one thing, assuming that is the answer, as opposed to truly collect all the information that's noted so that we can see
So
if
what's
that's
the-
what it
And
comes
and
out.
it's narrower than we really
I'm going to
frankly
get you in a
wanted.
minute,
Yeah.
Susan.
So I just want to make sure, so it sounds like we are collectively supportive of the action. What we're adjusting is the verbiage in the letter to make sure that feels like it captures the board's intent for both the water project and the sewer
Yeah,
project.
and I haven't
How
compared
about
it to-
if we, could we just make it more general saying, you know, the goals of the study or the research include without saying
How
like.
about the goals of building sustainability, like cross out that?
Yeah, just get rid of the smart
building
sewer,
sustainability,
just-
replenish, are all part of this. You know, somehow make that a sentence, but not making it so narrow. And we might be the only board who has those kind of tweaks, but that's okay.
And Gina and Sean, as you guys sort of work on this, do those tweaks feel like they undermine your ability to pursue the grant in the way that you want to, or do they feel in scope? So I think the point you raised was that there was the thinking that the state may be more interested in funding investigations into novel systems as opposed to conventional systems. So I think the question is, I think our intent is actually broad and innovative look, but if we take out the language about smart sewer, does that feel like it undermines your ability to effectively pursue the grant?
It may.
Would if we
Maybe.
put in something that says such as possibly smart sewer or something
Yeah.
like that?
You changing the
Yeah.
wording in the letter, or you changing the wording in the application?
In the
No,
letter.
Just the letter.
I think-
Change whatever you want in the letter, because this was a letter that would,
It's a
they
boilerplate.
asked that multiple boards
Yeah.
send.
Yeah.
I but you could choose to not send it, we're still sending the application.
I think it's a
Just wouldn't
stronger
make
letter
sense.
with your own wording rather
Yeah,
than
yeah.
just
Yeah.
signing the template
Yeah.
anyway.
I think it's fine.
Yeah,
Okay,
But it has to be sent tomorrow.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll,
Yeah.
and frankly,
Yes.
we have to do it tonight because
Yeah.
I'm leaving
Share your
at
frustration.
3:30 in
But
the
yeah.
morning.
so that's,
So-
I want to manage scope just because we have many other
Yes.
things that I think we'll have rich discussion.
Right,
So
okay.
I would like to, I think we're collectively fine with the C
All right.
plus letter that feels like it's on track.
Okay.
Do we feel like we're at that? So it feels like the sentence edit we made for sewer would also apply for water in terms of
Yeah, we'll
we're
have
supportive of
to go
engagement.
through and just check it. The question is, maybe we want to.
Why don't we just take that whole goals thing out? We don't, that's just fluff. That's like, we don't need that. We can just say, climate change threats from both flooding and drought, may or could affect Title V systems, drinking water, and then just go right to, this is an exciting project. Like, we don't even need that. Like, we don't have to say about what all the goals are, because all that stuff's
And-
meets in the application.
It is,
Yeah.
it is.
So let's
That's
just
right.
take that sentence out.
Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, with all due respect to the planning board, isn't this a bit of a hustle to sign this improvising as you go? I would think it's far wiser to simply not sign it at this point. You're having pressure here at the last moment with changes that you're making as you go. It doesn't have the quality of a thoughtful process.
And having been involved in the things that the state is pushing since I was on my first board in 1980 and ever since, I think you're absolutely right. Lisa is saying it doesn't fit us, you know, and Matt is saying, yeah, we just want the information. But these things take on a life of their own, and there is a reason that the state is pushing something very specific on us. And so I think, you know, you're very right to try to revise it to the point where it doesn't present us with any imperative at all, no matter what it turns out.
Can I
We
answer
simply
that real
want
quick?
the information.
Yeah, but it is on it.
This is, just to put this in context, we've been working on this for a couple of years. We're backed up against the wall because there's a funding deadline. This is not, the state did not write this. This is a letter of support that a consultant put together. He misspoke, he made a statement that none of us really agree with. Me and Gino have not had infinite amount of time to prove this, so they're proofing it. The conservation's not gonna sign that letter. They don't have a meeting tonight, they didn't have the liberty to look at it, they're not gonna get one. It's gonna look a little silly if we send this into the Board of Health didn't support it.
Don't you think
If
it's
the
funny
DPW
that
and the planning board are
you've
doing it.
been
So
working on it for 2 years?
if
why
we
are
have an
we worried about it
opportunity to
now?
get through this, we should. It's worth doing. It's data. It fits right into, we want data. It's not,
I don't think we can say with one hand, we want more information and we don't want to take the steps to get it. You have to pick one. You can't say we really need to carefully consider it, but I object to every way that we'll test and consider it. My own personal preferences about whether I'd be enthusiastic about it aren't the issue. It's the question of, does the Board of Health's job to serve the public interest serve by information or an absence of information? And I would say, we can do a study, and I'm not, like, the reason we're raising this is we're not saying we're supportive of a smart sewer or public water
Committing
supply.
to an
Like, I think we're saying, if every single meeting we're at, people say we need more careful study, unless we have facts, we're just having a conversation. And so if we have a way to get funding for facts, I'm supportive of that, even if it's not the language I would use to write the letter, because I don't know what I'm otherwise considering or contemplating without information to do it with. And so from my standpoint, like, I'm not deeply enthusiastic about many of the projects we talk about, but my job is to come up here and thoughtfully think about them and say, as a random Sherburnian, Sherburnite, I have the opportunity to spend my Wednesday evenings with you, not with my kids, to do my best to think about it thoughtfully in a context where I have yet to be in something where everybody said, I feel really good about this. I'm at almost 3 years in, and I've had that 0 times. And so I think for us, it's like, what are the trade-offs? I want information. I don't want to pre-commit. And if that's what we can do, even if it's imperfect, next time, I don't want to see the letter the day before it's due, because that doesn't give me the due diligence, but I don't want to die on that hill to say, boy, this is what I feel like is the most important part of the process. I really don't want to see it next time like that, because I feel frustrated too to get this close. I don't think it was your intention.
No,
But
we're
if we-
frustrated too.
But if we've got a consultant, that needs to be
Good point.
the feedback that they get is the fact that this came in now was a real problem in having it carefully deliberated, because none of us want, I think to your point, Suzie, none of us want to blindly commit to something without having it have complete information. And that's the experience that this feels like if we don't tweak it. I think we're providing a letter of support. We're not providing the grant application. It's not on me to say, Gino, this is what it should look like or not look like. That's for planning board and for kind of town to look at. But like for me, I don't love it, not the hill I'll die on.
And that's why I want to include something and also let you know, we'd really like to be involved in the next go-round
You
of this.
absolutely will
Like
be.
that.
So-
We need that.
Yeah.
Because more time.
Well, no, but again, I think that
But
there's
we
lots of.
see it
Well, there's
day
lots
in
of-
and day out.
There's
so-
lots of pieces where we have the conversation where we're not the regulatory body. This is the point that we should have a voice and we should be a perspective of the town in driving this. And that's different than, places where we're saying what's the kind of licensing and permitting of a public water supply or wastewater treatment. This is town of Sherborn thinking about what makes sense for our collective future.
Right. And a big thing to get us through climate change on at least some fronts is to try to keep our water clean. So, if we can move towards that and get more information, then
So in terms
that's
of,
going to be it.
so in terms of
We can't
tweaking.
count, and as the
We
weather
good?
becomes more erratic, we can't count on getting it from somewhere else and always assume that's the default if we don't manage well within the borders, so. Lisa, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, do you feel like you captured the edits okay? Do you want me to?
So here's the question. I don't know, should we try to finalize all that now or move on to other things?
No, let's
I
move on.
would move on to other things.
And
It
then
sounds
we'll
like we
come
have
back and-
flexibility on the letter
Carol,
language
I think
that passes the
with
gut
like
test for
2
us. I
minutes,
think
I
we're.
can work with you.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean,
Or you
I've
can sign it
got
and hand it to me at 8 a.m.
most of it,
Yeah,
but
I think the
didn't
goal
do
is to have
for
it
the
done
second one,
tonight.
so,
It's just
yeah.
like, let's mull this when we can mull and chew on it. Because I think other people also have questions about Hunting Lane well testing is my guess. And I would love to close that out.
Yeah. Right, so you've got the sense of what we want to do to adjust this, not have some of the claims in here that just seem more complicated issues, and
So I
then
think-
express our support just through the research, and that we want to participate in the process, expect to, requires, whatever.
So I just want to be clear about what we're doing. So we're going to complete the letter in the open meeting. We're just pushing that to the end because I think there are other
Yes.
pieces that people are more
Yes.
invested in. Perfect.
So, because then we'll just sit here and go through it, and watching us write edits is maybe not the most exciting thing. Okay, and because we need to get that to you, and I need to sign it tonight before,
Yep.
so I guess it could be on Gino's desk, right? So,
Actually, just for clarification, so there's 2 versions of the letter.
yeah.
Yes.
Which is considered the more recent, or can we just, we only need to?
I think one is water, one is sewer.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think they're two different.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there's a bunch more stuff even in the water one that I'm like,
Yeah.
where did you get this information?
But that's not part of the letter. The letter's 1 page.
Yeah,
No, there's 2 letters though. The
No, no.
second letter has a whole bunch of other stuff in it.
no, she
that-
just, doesn't mean a whole bunch of other pages, just
No, it's
a
just
bigger
saying-
paragraph. We'll go through it.
Yeah, I'm
We'll
just-
make it what
I'm
we're
deleting.
comfortable with, but express support for the information gathering effort
Perfect.
and
That's
deep
what we
dive
need.
and all that kind of stuff.
All right.
Okay,
Hunting Lane well
All right.
testing.
yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much,
Thank
guys.
you very much for coming and
Thank you.
helping us to understand that in the Cliff Notes version.
Thanks.
So. Okay. So we
Hunting Lane
have
well testing.
some well reports, and Mark, have you had a chance to look it over? Would you be the best person to summarize
For,
comments on that?
I have not had a chance to look
The
those
Hunting
over.
Lane, okay.
I think, I mean, there's very little information
Yeah.
really on them. I don't think that we can really have much of a discussion,
Well,
except
let's-
that the capacity looked
I
really
guess one
low.
question, the capacity for well 2 seems surprisingly
Yeah,
low.
very low. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Like untenably low?
yeah, that's not enough for any kind of.
And that's post fracking, water fracking, hydrofracking, not chemical fracking.
Although I thought they said they didn't introduce.
Hey, do you want to
water.
just mention for folks, well 1, well 2 depth and the rates that were found?
Who, me or Mark?
Yeah, you.
I would need the data. I
Since
just don't have it with
since
me.
Mark hasn't had a chance to see.
Well, I mean, they went to similar, there were two wells that they have one right now. What happened to the other one?
So I've got it. So I think there's two wells. Well,
Two
one.
wells. Well one, they drilled to a depth of 820 feet. It was granite bedrock starting at 17 feet, so very shallow ledge. They said they, used a slow drill rate. They did not, it says loss or addition of fluid, and it didn't have anything checked. So I am not clear on if they actually introduced, they did hydrofracking, because I would think if they had added water as they were drilling, they would have checked it. So I don't know if that's an omission, or if, in fact, they did not.
And it says fracture enhancement, no, but again, I don't.
So, see what I'm saying? So like, see how they didn't check anything, so
Balances
I'm not sure if it was, actually done. So that one had a, 40 GPM yield, and it took,
Wait, for well number one?
yeah, see, it says well test data.
Maybe I switched my, oh, yep.
Yeah,
Okay,
yield was
sorry.
40 gallons per minute,
Yep.
with an hour and a half of pumping, and then the time to recover was 2.5
I
hours.
did look at those.
Right, so,
One was
you know.
40 and one was less.
And one was like, the second one was
No,
7.
so well two was like, yeah.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, so
I looked at
that's a very low yield.
But that just goes to the nature of bedrock, right?
Right.
These two wells are quite close together.
Right, but
They
you can have
drilled down,
fractures.
One hit a bunch of
Yeah,
fractures and the
one
other
didn't.
one didn't.
Right, so
So-
obviously, the higher yield one had more weathering fractures, and the other one did not.
We don't know exactly,
It was well too.
7 gallons per minute.
Well, two was like 7 gallons per minute, and it,
Same depth.
yeah, it was about 800.
Yeah, 820 feet to granite.
Same, all the rest of, everything else was the same. It looked like roughly the same between the two wells, except for the yield.
And this
Well, two,
is
agree.
public record, correct?
Yes,
Yeah, because it went into DEP, right?
And-
The well completion
yes.
report.
I'm looking for the start and end times to see if they did simultaneous pumping. So that would be the other,
I didn't see time.
yeah, I don't see any,
They just said how long it took.
Very fascinating.
yeah.
And
Oh,
so-
well, actually, yeah, well, so I was interpreting that like for how long they pumped it, which was an hour and a half, and then it took 2.5 to recover? Or did they mean that they started pumping, oh, no, that wouldn't make sense.
Well, and sometimes they won't sink a pump. They will actually push air through the well to get the pump rate. I'm not for sure how they did it, but typically when they have to sink a pump, that means electrical work and so forth. So I would have to check into that if they, sometimes they just force air into the well to push the
It does say
water.
air blow.
Yeah, and that's what they did. That's really not with a pump. That's more with the air forcing, forcing air through the well.
So we also don't know if they were pumped simultaneously.
No, there's not a lot, I mean, it's pretty minimal information on
Yeah.
there, so.
What questions do folks have about the wells?
Well, I probably couldn't answer them based on any more than, what we said is probably all we can say right now, except, looks like pretty low yield, I would say, on the second well, and expected types of yield on the first one, and so, and this is it, like, we don't have any more information than this. It's pretty
We weren't
scant.
invited to observe, so
I
we.
was gonna ask.
No, we did not observe. No.
Did not know.
Nope. They did not elect, they said they were going to at one point, and that they were gonna notify us prior to doing the drilling, and then they decided that that wasn't required because these were exploratory in nature, and therefore they did not notify us. Mark.
Correct.
That's all we know.
Thank you.
Okay. So, let's see. So David's not here, so for ledge disruption, we're not going to have that update because David was going to be doing research, so,
Thank you.
Good night. 200 Lake Street?
yes.
Okay, and as we're discussing this property, we did do an overview back on October 2nd of ledge disruption in general, but the potential purchaser of this property was very concerned about where the board was going, so we didn't discuss it, but I think the owner's here, well, the potential owner and the present owner's here, so that was discussed, and the way it ended up, I think a motion was made to seek further guidance from town council regarding the ledge disruption regulation, so that's where it stands. This plan here shows the house up there where there's, let me take this plan apart, there's two sides here. Soil testing that shows the, I don't know, can everyone see it? So this is Lake Street here. You can come up, I don't bite if you want, you can add. There's Shane Lang, he's the engineer for the plan, as well as the potential owner and the owner, well, I don't know who it is right now. The owners, I'll say, have been involved with this plan, and it was, soil testing was done a couple of years ago, and I wasn't the person out there at the time. But they did go back out in the spring to do a confirmatory test, and let me show you. I asked Shane to make sure he put general information on groundwater adjustments on the plan as we require, as well as the soil evaluation. He fit it all in pretty good, Shane.
Okay, can we just back up 1 second?
Yep.
I'm looking for a locus, oh, there it is.
Locus is right here, sorry, Darryl.
Okay.
Here's Farm Pond, here's
Okay,
Lake
and
Street.
this is where the existing house is, so this
Correct,
is
yeah.
not, okay, just wanted to make sure.
So
Okay.
it probably won't be 200 Lake Dock Road, right? It'll be
It's gonna have a letter next to it.
A letter, so 200, okay. But that's a good point to bring up. And again, we're up on the hill here for the house. I was more or less just getting to the fact that they dug a deeper hole here with me back in the spring and did a groundwater adjustment. And we're basing the groundwater on the deepest hole because it was all pretty much sands that we found out there, and that would be the way
Right
to do
across
it.
from Farm Pond.
Yeah. But the.
Is that the only place
Yeah, I was
that
gonna say,
really
is
makes
that-
sense? Because it's so close and it's all
Literally,
sand there.
You have been digging almost 16 feet is still on drive.
No, 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 no.
No, I think we're worried about not coming in, we're talking, worried about going out.
In the backyard.
Crazy
No,
fast.
that's a
So-
ledge.
It's all,
Yeah.
so how
It's all
shallow is the
ledge,
ledge?
it's all
Is
ledge
it
up.
like,
Some places 2 feet, so some places 8, 7.
Well, we can look at that and then go
Okay,
back to that plan.
okay.
So here's some of the soil testing with the groundwater adjustments, and here's some of the testing up top, H1, H2, and H3.
For the house.
And they went down 25 feet on this, 66 and 84. With this said, there will be the need for ledge disruption as I started the conversation. Again, I know we're presently looking into what we're doing with that regulation. The other point is deep test number 5 was utilized as the deepest hole with the groundwater adjustment, which plays into the elevation of the groundwater at 174.23. They're at 183 at the base of the system, so they have plenty of.
9 feet, even for the correct,
so
access.
you wouldn't need a variance for,
Oh, I mean, we wouldn't do a variance.
They couldn't because
I
it's
know,
new
it's new
construction.
construction.
It is gonna be
and it's
shrink-
across from the pond.
So what's the
There's another
setback?
house across the street.
Yeah.
though, here.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's not
But-
like-
But indeed, it is down at the base.
What's the setback? I mean, again, is that,
30?
It's downhill for the well to the septic leaching field.
no, for the septic to
To
farm pond or?
Surface water?
Surface
Oh, is it
water.
No, it's more than that. It's
Yeah,
like
100.
100?
Yeah, more than 150.
120, it's 125.
Didn't we actually, wasn't that one of our changes? Was that?
No, I
or
think that was in the
Concom.
context of this.
What's the Concom? Is it
If you're
150?
looking here, this is 300. This is
For
300.
the surface water?
I changed
I want to say 175.
Yeah.
This-
It's,
Yeah.
it's,
So the
it's,
leaching field is
And so we may say that's
far.
close, but if it meets that, it meets
Yeah,
a
no, I
regulatory
mean-
requirement.
To the pond. Because
This is
there's
still
another
That's-
house.
300.
that says 1 inch is 300,
Yeah.
so.
And so I guess the clarifying
So-
question for us is, it
so-
sounds like ledge will be
It's
disrupted.
further than it looks.
What's the board thinking about
For
this?
sure.
Yeah,
There's another house actually.
Right.
Much
yeah,
closer.
yeah. But that, like, there are lots of things that are much worse than new things that we would say, if new thing didn't meet regulation, the fact that this old thing that is also not meeting regulation wouldn't make you feel better about more things that don't meet it, but in this case, it meets all
For
of
our
it.
case, our system is probably, in reality, it's probably 20 feet above water table.
Yeah.
So you might, that
It's not
that
meet that,
trickling,
yeah.
like almost like a sand filter
Yeah.
goes through that much.
So, but indeed, they have their distance to the well, there's no problem there. They, design-wise, they could have come up here. Again, and Deschamps wasn't the original engineer that did the testing, right? You were, who was the engineer? Was
So I
it-
just want to be
Yeah.
clear for the question for tonight. So it sounds like we've got a bunch of stuff that doesn't need variances, so I'd say
Yeah,
we shouldn't
there's no
talk about
variances
that.
needed.
But it's really the question of what does the future of ledge disruption and regulation look
That
like?
is the only question
Sort of,
for the plan.
right.
But you don't have, I mean, the ledge is for the construction of the house.
Yeah,
right,
N-
yeah.
Completely distinct from the.
But,
site.
right, right. But I think your question is, we're now getting more concrete with plans, and so we understand that ledge is in flux. We want to understand what that looks like before we move further down. I just want to make sure I'm answering the right question, because I feel like we're talking about a series of compliance systems that we don't have a variance for. So like, is it predicting the future of what are we thinking about for ledge, or what's the board's general intention or current status,
I
or?
think the potential homeowner came to the meeting on October 2nd to hear what the board stood on
Yeah.
that.
So I think that.
But we didn't have a plan in front of us or
Right.
any.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is for just septic approval, not.
And well.
Right.
Right.
Well,
And the house, and the only other thing that, well, one, you will need to disrupt ledge, so it just has to be noted. The board presently is having that ledge disruption regulation looked at. But the other note too is the fact that the determination of groundwater at the house, you dealt with Deschamps actually on another one on Green Lane, it wasn't where he had to make a determination, but the determination was made after the excavation of the foundation area, so that's why I asked for him to put an explanation if that's what his consideration is for this plan.
You mean for the
I did-
what,
I did-
installation of the well?
No, for the installation of the actual concrete foundation and garage.
You're here for Green Lane.
I'm just super confused. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
want to
So
make sure I
what are-
understand
what
this
are we
question.
talking about
So
here?
we need to do well and septic. Those have no variances and can satisfy all Sherborn regulations.
Yes.
That should be easy.
Right.
We then have a separate question where we have a
Ledge.
past issue with ledge disruption that we want to provide you clarity to say, this is the time you should measure it and the way we would expect you to do that calculation, and to resolve any discordance between our perception and your perception tonight.
And last but not least is how do you want the engineer to determine groundwater in the area of the house? Because we require that you prove that you're 2 feet from
Above grade.
groundwater. And right now, there's ledge there and it's dry, so there's no, if adjustments were applied, it'd be in above quite a bit, but that's where we're going in that last point. I didn't mean to.
And that was the
You are
Green
correct.
Lane property where we said, you built this on ledge.
Oh, right. And
Like
then-
this was the
so
one that was like the
one-
walkout basement, and then it
Yeah.
was the water mitigation issues.
Because,
Yeah.
right, the
Correct,
plan,
correct. You get down to 25, 66, and 84, but, you know, and these are the tests right here. And there is ledge up there, so
so they may or may not.
it's
But I think what-
difficult part to determine groundwater.
But I think what we said for Green Lane was like, our goal is to make sure you know what you're dealing with, as opposed to there is a public health risk that we're independently worried about. I mean, that was like when we were first.
Didn't we have them put a
They
deed
had to-
restriction?
They had to demonstrate that the way it was going to be designed would shed water away from accumulating
Yeah.
in
It
the
was-
basement because.
It was gonna sheet flow.
And-
We're
right,
also not
right,
looking for that as a
right.
feature.
And deed recording, so future
Right.
owners would know that
Yeah.
there was a
Don't want
risk
wet water.
in
Yeah.
terms of,
We don't have a pool plan.
Yeah.
so.
But, and the reason now it's coming back, and the reason we had to look at that plan, it was already approved, but what happened, they decided.
They
to
modified.
They moved it,
move the house up the hill.
right.
Yes.
And when they did that, that's when the ledge came into play, and Deschamps was hired as a geohydrologist, I don't know if that's your background. but, you know.
hydrogeologist.
Yeah, and he determined groundwater, but he did it when the whole area was open for the foundation. The question is, does the board want it determined now on this plan? But this is what Deschamps will have to explain, if he can't do it now, why? You know, that would be.
Am I ready to do that? Like, this seems really difficult,
Well,
like.
in our
be-
regulations, we require the foundation be 2 feet above
Okay.
groundwater. So we gotta get through that somehow.
Right.
That's what we're.
That's fact A.
Yeah.
But I mean, do you even have a sense from this sort of conceptual plan of how much ledge you would even need to disrupt to?
And that's the other
Yeah,
situation.
the elevations are there, how much ledge will need to come out in order to get the foundation.
So what's the
So
estimate?
that's no, I mean, it's gonna vary based on
it's a two issues here as far as I think, Mark, under the regulation definitely is a legit concern to see actually where is the true water table, under the basement floor, because that's the major concern first, right? So we did go there, did bunches of, actually, we did more actually
Yes,
later
you had
on.
other tests before.
Right,
you
right,
did
we
it.
did, in spring, so April, right in the high, Mark and I was there, did 3 test pit. One is at the higher elevation, test pit 1, and test pit 2, and test pit 3. You can see it's like you kind of follow this line, kind of crossing this house. So all the test pit is all, even it's on the hill, it's very unusual. So this is the first time, it's all sand. So it's very permeable soils. It's getting close to top of the hill. All the water get there, it just cannot hold. So you don't see a drop of water even in the hole, first. And second, there's no modeling. So for that
Okay, so
set,
sand doesn't tend to model, and not seeing it anytime you've dug in the last 6 months, we would not expect to be seeing water because it's been so dry. So those aren't going to be the deciding factors for us.
Right, no, I let me finish it. So that I agree, so if sand doesn't model, but the color does change. If you're underwater, the sand tend to be green. So that's through the whole depth is brown sand. So it means they are not really under significant water. And right in the middle of the April, and we also went back in May, Mark and I checked it. All the test pit is all dry to the top of the ledge, okay? And secondly, this is kind of pretty on the slope. We do have a test pit number at the H3. If you see it, the basement floor is above the ground level of that test pit, and that test pit have 7 foot of sand. So it means our basement is 7 feet above the sand or the ledge level on the lower end. The only thing is on the up here, and here is a garage. There's no basement, so actually the basement is up here, which will require some ledge removal, a couple of feet. So, but we are proposing to blasting the ledge at least 2 feet below the cellar floor to fill with the crushed stone. And my concern, just exactly as you spelled it out for Green Lane, is more concern of the surface water intrusion. There's no doubt, there's no way there should be groundwater flooding this basement, because the walkout at the down gradient side of it, 7 foot of sand. How can you? So the water cannot accumulate. Okay.
Is this going to be
Walkout.
fully walkout
Yes.
on that side?
Exactly.
No.
On this end.
Just this one spot is walkout, yes,
Oh.
the side walkout.
So,
This is.
But there's a field with the sand.
so when you were designing conceptually, like where the garage, where the basement, so one thing to keep in mind is we want you to disrupt as low a volume of ledge as feasible.
Exactly.
So by figuring out where is the ledge the deepest, and that's where I want to
And
put
then so
things
if
like
my
a
foundation
basement,
is not
and
large
where is it
garages.
the shallowest where I can be doing the at-grade
Perfect.
garage.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's
All
exactly,
right.
that's exactly how this is laid
Where the
out.
shallowest
A lot
ledge
of
was the
time was
garage.
spent.
Okay,
No,
yeah. Well, no, that's good, that's what we
You won't
want.
believe how much
I
time
know.
we
It was a lot.
spend on it.
Okay.
Because of that issue.
So I have another question just for tonight. I'm feeling, okay, if the septic and well meet our requirements on this plan, this is a definitive location of the house, because there's still more to be done. It depends on whether the well works out there. You have to move the well to somewhere else. So to me, it's a little more in flux. Can we have a 2-stage process?
Yeah, you
where
could
we
approve the well
look
one.
at these? It's at risk that works out, but I guess what I'm thinking is I'd like to see the same thing as what was done for Green Lane, that there's an analysis done about the stone that's going to be placed, that it's not going to be the bedrock. that
Right,
is
yeah,
broken up.
not the stuff you just
It's going to be
So we're doing
blast it.
a plan that will show
a
that?
plan that's and he's done it before, to talk about how that basement will not fill up with water. And he does the analysis, so it goes on record, it goes as a deed recording. We We're not going to guarantee that it's going to work, but we want to see that the process has been gone through to protect you and anyone in the future who's trying to live there, so you're not living in something that's got a basement full of mold, which is a health hazard. So, not a public health hazard, but certainly to you, members of the public. So anyway, so that's the goal.
Does
I
that work
think.
for you guys?
Yeah, I would say, let's see if I can just similar to like a Green Lane way. So it's kind of.
We'd expect to see cross-sections, analyses, flow volumes that could be handled.
Yeah.
You need to do that for the protection of their home,
Right,
if you
no.
feel that it's going to work.
Sure, we would do, I would like
Demonstrate.
to be done at the time when the foundation hole is open, because any analysis is have to based on factual information. If I just assume something, it may not see well, because when you open the latch, you can see the factual everything.
I think the one risk is like if we then, like, I'm totally happy as long as we recognize if the risk are like, oh yeah, this actually doesn't work.
Yeah, then.
That it's not, oh, we already have a foundation hole, like we can't possibly do something different because we've got this hole and we're doing this now. So I'd say, didn't happen on Green Lane, don't expect it to happen here, but God forbid it does. I don't want to surprise you then with, this was one of the sets
You
of
can't
trade-offs
do
we did
this,
by
yeah.
doing it this.
No, it's at
Right.
all risk.
But
I will
but
explain
but
clearly.
but I don't have
I
a
think
place
that's
where I'm
almost
like,
for
I
any
expect
house,
this to
You never know
happen.
what you're going to hit.
Exactly, that's what I mean. No matter where you try to put it,
So-
even if you did all the
Like, I think that's a very unlikely outcome. I just want to say,
Is it-
if it's a 1 in
you
a
said you've
1,000
been
chance, I
studying
don't want
this,
you to
so-
surprise after foundation's dug in the 1 in a 1,000.
So it would really be to develop a plan for the drainage based on kind of what we would expect.
Right, when
we
the
do
whole
the site
site-
work, when we
exactly.
actually do the site
Right.
work. And then have to
We'll
verify.
Cross-check, yeah.
that it's kind of
Exactly.
Right.
We'll go
Comparable.
back in and
Right.
it's the same we did it.
Works,
And
if
to
it
ensure
doesn't,
that-
And then revise.
Then we
When there
follow-
is a deluge, which someday it will come, may not have been in the last year, and water will be rushing off that bedrock on the hill, and is it going to flood your basement or not? Or make it damp or
That's a
not?
good point. You have
So I
legend
think
on it,
that's
too.
kind of what that analysis should be seeking to do.
I think, does that answer the questions for 200A Lake Street?
And under.
If it does, so I won't be at the next meeting, but I just want to make sure I understand the pieces we're talking about, because David couldn't be here tonight. So my recollection is, where we've stood is that, based on the question, the sort of how do we make the most defensible regulation, the feeling was we do need to have a public hearing. So the scope for next week is to talk about that. The key public hearing piece is the exception to single family, like sort of addressing that this does apply to single
And
family
we
homes.
also don't have legal counsel's input yet on some of those refinements of.
But I just want to be
how
clear,
far
like, I
we
think
go
we need
and
to
that
get
sort
to the
of
place
thing.
where we're getting that guidance to do the public hearing. And so, I'm
Yeah, but
totally-
don't we need the clarifications, like the little consistencies things and some of the definition issues? Do we have a sense of when
But
that's?
they don't have to wait for
No,
our
they don't.
process.
This
to-
has.
Be outside
Yeah,
of that.
yeah.
Right, but again, I just want to be clear, because I feel like we've talked about it in the context of thinking about issues raised at this project a couple of times. I think the larger conversation, much like Jameson feels is independent of 41 North Main, like ledge regulation is independent of Lake Street. But I want to be specific, because I feel like we've talked about it a couple of times, and if we're like still talking about it, I think we need to pin down, these are the questions we have for council, this is the pathway to get it, this is the timing for a public
Yeah,
hearing.
we do have the
I
questions.
thought we
Yeah.
provided them to council already.
I think,
No?
yeah,
Not yet.
Oh,
so I think we need to get those pinned.
I thought we did that.
There've been some intervening events.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
So with respect to 200A.
Yeah.
Can we get an approval for the south of the well location and come back at the
Subject.
next meeting with kind of the drainage plan for the foundation?
Right,
well,
and that will,
do-
goes to addressing the issue that usually we want seasonal high groundwater to be 2 feet below the bottom
Of the
of the
foundation.
foundation. But because it's ledge,
Right.
there's no way to measure where groundwater is in
That's
ledge.
correct.
So that's what we're up against, is that there's a mismatch of the two things. And it does pose risk because, right, the water hits that.
But I think we've
Doesn't-
said, yes, we can do
Yeah.
phase 1 tonight.
Yeah.
Phase 2 then depends on what you see. If we're saying phase 2 comes after foundation is created, then that's probably not next Wednesday.
No.
Yeah,
I'm just not sure we could get a permit, though.
Well, this
Or-
is, if I may, the process would be, first and foremost, the plan would be approved but you could not get your building permit to start the house until the water is proven potable.
Right.
That's step one. And that requires quality and quantity. Dave, you've been through it, I'm sorry, it's a broken record to you. Second step, though, is you can't put in the septic system. That's the last thing you do. The house would go in next, but that would be the time you would start making the area for the foundation, and that's what they did on Green Lane, and that's when you went out, when the whole
what's your
area was
question in
opened
terms
up
of
and crushed out to see what ground, so that's step two.
Then I would design it, right?
So could we submit an application for a building permit, but not actually receive the foundation piece of it until the excavation was done and it was signed off on that board?
Your water potability is number one. Oh, okay, I didn't know if you were missing that point. So water potability is proven. If the plan's approved, then your building permit would be approved, but if you just want to go for a foundation permit, you can do that without even getting your water
But
approved.
we can't get a foundation permit until we have you sign off on the drainage plan for the foundation, correct?
No, I don't, well, the board doesn't want the foundation in, but you could dig up the area for the foundation. That's how we did it, not to give you a direct no, but that's how we did it on Green Lane.
But did they have a permit before they started doing the digging?
They changed the house location, so it stopped the permit and put the name.
But they had one in effect at the
That's
time,
correct.
so.
We don't need a building permit to do the site work, but it's nice to know that as soon as you're done with the
You
site
can
work.
do the next phase.
you can
And
actually
So
pour.
I
If it
guess the
looks
question is,
good.
what's the
Right.
closest we can get to that while still feeling like we've got due diligence and oversight of the process? Because this feels unlikely to be a place where we're like, oh, whoops, this didn't get checked or resolved. But how much can we do in a way that's consistent with what we've done on other properties? So what does that look like to you, Mark?
I think get the foundation ready, the area ready for the foundation, dig it down to the level you need to be at, have your engineer go back out and do a complete review, as Darrell said, submit that to the board. You can drill the well while this is all going on too, but again, you gotta work out the logistics about the well rig getting around everything, so that's but then that has to come back to the board for review before, I would suggest before your building permit's approved, because you don't wanna go building to find out water's gonna come in, you have to raise the foundation or whatever.
So I guess one question is like, is there a conditional piece where we say, conditionally, you can proceed with the building permits, you're not waiting for the permitting process while we're getting to the point of, like, if you're like, I've got 2 weeks, so is that consistent with what we've done, or is that inconsistent?
You said he can get his building permit, but.
No, I'm just raising the question, because I think we're answering a different question than you're asking. I think you're asking, I want to have all these things in parallel as far as possible, because it's November. And so your question is really, can I start the building permit process knowing that I won't have complete information?
But don't they?
That's okay, I can review your building application anytime. I just can't sign it till potable water's proven, and I believe now, the other condition's going to be the report submitted to the board from Deschang indicating where the groundwater is, because.
So when houses are being built not in ledge and they demonstrate that appropriate
Yes.
clearance to groundwater, at what point is that done?
Okay, once the potability of the water is proven, I review the building application. If it matches the septic plan and the room count, I approve the building
Is there
plan.
a pit that's dug at the location
Of the house?
foundation, and that's?
To demonstrate a flooding.
So that's comparable to this in
Yeah,
terms
the
of
only problem, we
doing
don't have
some
the answer.
investigation of that.
We don't have the answer on where the groundwater is at the foundation.
At
That's
that
the
moment.
missing
Right now,
data
right,
here.
right.
So
Because
that's the
of-
only missing data, really.
But.
Outside
they
of the
can
discussion on
correct that,
legislation.
And is that always ready at the time that we're approving the well and
Yes.
septic?
It's always-
Normally that's,
Yes.
because it's easier, because it's just.
Because the house is already shown, and you gotta prove the house is 2 feet above groundwater at the base of the foundation.
So,
I think it might be easier to come in with a plan now based on, our assumptions related to the site and have you
with the
sign off
drainage.
on that and then have a confirmation. Because then we can go through the whole permit process with the permit in hand, and then we can just go through confirmation that the site characteristics match.
Match
what we're
the
asking.
assumptions.
Will he be able to do that?
I already did that, actually, to the degree, so based on the soil logs here, if you're looking on the profile, based on my the reviewing of the soil, is we did determine estimated high groundwater at the 207, which is the cellar floor is 290 is way above.
okay, so did you get a chance, Mark, to review
No.
the estimated by groundwater number?
So the 207, where are you showing that 207?
I think-
Right here
did
at this point?
Just come in today?
And
Yeah, Mark
what's
didn't
that
have a
based
chance.
on?
Based on
Yeah, it's
this,
good. You mean, should
we
we try and do
estimate the
this? Came in
groundwater
today.
table, given the soil conditions.
This was
and
received
the-
today.
and so interpolations
From
from
yesterday,
our,
and then this one came
But,
today.
but let me,
But we do need to
Yeah.
confirm it in that.
well, you do,
Was
because
another version? Was there another?
Okay,
mean-
okay, so it came
Yeah.
yesterday, which,
I'll help you on that.
you know, he has other things lined up, I'm not sure.
Same green line.
So he's already been able to review that?
Well, no, it's not adjusted. That was from April without an adjustment.
Okay.
I said at the beginning, to adjust shallow holes is gonna throw you up in the air.
Yeah.
So can we resolve
So
this
he
tonight, or
need-
do we need to resolve it next
It
week?
needs to be done where he does a hydrology type report.
So it doesn't sound like it's
hydrologic
ready
report.
for tonight.
No,
No,
but
that
the
207
question
's
goes back
unadjusted.
to,
Can we,
right, the foundation seems like it's not consistent with what we do. If to approve everything usually means that we already have a number of what that depth of groundwater is below the foundation, which we know.
Right.
Right. And even as Duchesne pointed out, he needs more facts to be able to then design the plan of how you're going to prevent any water from backing up into the home. So, yeah, to go back to, that's a little up in the air until you get to the next stage. And then presumably, if you get it in ample time and have enough time to review it, which probably you might want to
Are you saying the
specify
same
when you would
thing?
need to get it.
So I think you're not saying the same thing. I think you're saying,
So-
I think you're saying something different than what you're saying. I think you're saying, I want to go, if we have to do all those steps to do a foundation site assessment, I would rather go where we've got a groundwater adjustment to proceed with the plan.
but I thought Mark said he could do that.
Oh,
Yeah, you can do
oh,
your,
you don't want us to approve the well and septic?
okay.
And then the foundation piece of it, subject to site plan.
I thought you said you could, I thought you said that would be.
Yeah, so again, the only thing that's missing here is the discussion on what the groundwater level is at the house location, and it has, the 207 that was represented, it was just put on this most recent plan today, but it's not represented by a groundwater adjustment factor. And again, I don't think it's practical to do it on a shallow hole at this time, because it will send you out of the ground. So that's where the geohydrological study is done.
That we're not going to
Can you do that without,
verify,
without,
but that's for
It's something
you.
that, without the foundation hole.
yeah, can you do that without the foundation, or do a geohydro type report?
So the one, if you remember, at the time when we doing that, when we had the well drill, and that well water was way down near the house, so that's what I think if we get
That's right,
approval of the well and the septic, we can drill the well. When we drill the well, we will see what is the real water table in the bedrock, that's itself is.
So why don't we wait to do the foundation permit approval till after you do the well, which you have to wait for anyway?
Anyway.
So that's not a big deal.
Metric be.
Well, I think you're gonna get really good information on the
I think we're looking at your
rock,
guide
right?
to sort of say, this is what I need to do the
We
assessment.
drill the
Adjust
drinking
the
water well, we will
well.
see where the
Yeah.
actual water is.
I think that would be better, right?
Yeah, he needs
I
it.
know
sounds
it's way
like.
down.
Right, it's gonna be low.
Right.
No, and in the end, it's going to be an engineered solution to
Right.
the groundwater level.
Right.
Because
Right, but you don't really know though until you have the.
we don't really know, except the guess is if you had.
But once you're drilling the well, you're gonna have more information than you have right now, so
Yeah,
that,
that makes sense.
yeah.
I think the question you're asking is, what is the quickest way for me to proceed? And,
We just want to keep it.
yeah.
I
And so
think
are we
getting your
entering-
well in seems
Yeah.
So
very.
get
I
well
think
and
that's
septic
step
sounds like the
one.
punchline.
I think
Getting
that makes
septic-
sense.
If we get the septic approval and the well approval,
Yeah.
because we will need a well testing quantity and the quality before even Mark can proceed with any building
Right.
permit. As soon as that well is in, even probably without the foundation hole open, I can determine relatively hydrogeologic condition, because the well is upgrading of us. So if that upgrading well drilling to show the water table is 30, 40 feet down, you know the water in the ledge is way down. So, and
Okay.
the design drainage is only for surface water protection, for surface water insurance. I will incorporate in all my data. So you will have that matter probably when the wells drilled in a week or two.
And Mark, are you able to act on behalf of the board, or does that have to come back to board?
I would suggest that one come back to the board, because that's,
And so we've got a meeting next week and then
Again,
on
we're
the
not-
4th?
I don't think they'll be ready for it by
No.
next week, because the
No.
well drilling's gonna take 10 days to
First you have
2
to
weeks.
get the
But
guy
again,
out
if we're like, we're
there.
now into like January, like, I just want to be clear, like.
No, if he's
like-
out, if
It's a
they.
process.
Do you have a well driller ready to roll,
We do.
David?
That's Emily.
Oh, okay, okay.
We do, but we've just been waiting because, you know, we need to get some site work done to get him up there, so that.
Then, and who's that up to? Which one of you two are
So,
doing the site work?
Eric Gilmar, our
Okay.
builder, who, yeah.
So what I would suggest is this, is that the well be approved and the septic be approved conditional to, well,
Well, we
they
need-
can't put that in until the foundation's approved. Go ahead, Ellen, you're burning with a question over
Is the
there.
deed recording gonna be required for a garbage grinder?
Yes,
So
yeah, thank you.
they won't, they won't get the permit tomorrow, even if you approve it.
Yeah.
So step 1 is deed recording for garbage grinder. Step
Forget about
2
that
is,
Well, we can approve.
we can
Yeah,
approve the
can
plans
approve.
contingent.
And then
Then
next
it's
week.
circle back.
We can approve the septic.
Oh, you can
Well, we can approve the
it,
septic
you can
well
approve it,
today,
but
they just won't get the
be
permit.
given the permit
Okay.
until the
Yeah.
deed recording comes.
So it sounds like that's our next step.
All
to
right, that
proceed.
sounds, that sounds like a plan.
And then, so are we gonna come up with a plan, a foundation plan for drainage?
Has to.
Is that
He-
after we
he-
do the well?
that's-
Yes, yes, he's on it. You get it.
Right, yeah, that's.
I feel like he knows
So
what
here's
we're
the thing,
saying.
groundwater in the bedrock may be down, but again, it could be
So
that
it
water's
cheats.
gonna
That's it,
shed.
let's talk about
on
that
the
when we talk
ledge.
about that
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the
Let's-
plan, as
Not to
opposed
get you nervous, but
Not
I'm
now.
trying to
Not
make
now.
sure that, right, you
You've
get
gotta
the
f-
service from someone to
You're going to
guarantee
the
that,
airport
'cause I
in
had a
6.5
friend who
hours.
spent-
Yeah.
She had one corner of her basement with some bedrock open on the
Yeah.
other side, steep slope, and spent $250,000 just to make the basement dry. So,
We crushed stone. It all used to be crushed stone.
so.
Imported, not
Can
the
happen.
bedrock.
We
not
have
the
more
ledge.
stuff, I think we should be done, because we
Okay.
can keep doing
That's why
this.
we're
So,
saying right now.
all right, do we have a motion
So
to
moved.
approve the well and septic portion of the plan as presented, subject to
Deed recording.
deed recording for a garbage grinder?
So moved?
Second.
Any other comments?
That, the point you brought out that the foundation permit or the building permit can't be approved until further review.
Okay. And then with that amendment as well onto our
What
motion.
was that again, the building permit?
That the building permit can't be approved till further information is received on our requirement related to having groundwater 2 feet below the foundation. I think it's a building code requirement too, if I'm not mistaken. But it's, we're dealing
make
with our
sense.
requirements.
Yeah, many
Second.
towns require
Yeah.
that, you know, so that's why
Yeah.
in the general notes, we already made that note, so we have to make sure any
Yeah.
natural removal have to be additional 2 feet. And then, so based on the actual water, the gradings, it's all graded around the house, so in a repetitive way, they're not going to shoot into the house.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye,
Aye. Okay. So,
have a good night.
But to this point,
garbage grinder deed recording is next up on your list of things to do.
You can pick that up tomorrow?
I'll probably have to do that.
Okay, in the morning. Okay, before noon. Okay, I'll have it with
Have a good night, guys.
It goes to the registry of deeds, we bring it back,
Yeah.
and then we can give you the proof
Okay, all right,
and
perfect.
the- and the well permit.
Thank you.
Good night.
Well, why don't you go, and I don't know, let's see what else we have up. All right, so do people want to have a recess for a few minutes, or proceed with 3 of
I would-
us, not 4 of us?
I would proceed.
I could give her the.
Oh, you can recess. Yeah, why
Oh,
don't we
sure.
recess then?
All right, we'll have a brief recess.
okay,
At 9:50, 8:50.
all of a sudden I'm getting a sore throat.
Wait, what's going on?
I think they just need a brief break, and
She's
she's
getting
gonna
the
get the deed recording.
deed recording
I'll take
form
that
for them.
too.
And- Okay.
Can we keep going?
We took a recess, because without Ellen, it never happened.
Why don't we?
Yeah.
There will be a little discussion on some water testing.
Would you love to have that be the thing we do after recess?
I thought you were
Is that what you're
hinting
here
to
for?
me.
I was. It's very good.
For the prior thing.
Picked up on that.
But if you want to do general
actually
chemical, we
thought
can do
it
that.
would be
If that's the last thing you're
Although
invested
I
in,
was
we can do that next, so that you then can
every
choose
time I
whether it
see-
remains fascinating or not.
Okay, you guys
So I'm like, no,
Yeah.
actually not.
state and once you decide.
You know,
How can maybe
I actually.
And then,
train starts falling down. Trust me.
The levels that.
What I did is,
oh, sorry, Rick.
is,
Guys,
why not test the places? Oh, are we still on?
we're still on.
Oh.
I thought we were on recess.
Yeah, we're
We're on
having a.
recess.
Well, I'm not stopping the tape because
Oh, all
I
right.
was gonna start.
Okay, then, I'm not having a sidebar with you just yet. That's sweet. Okay.
Oh, why don't we?
Oh, sorry.
The letters.
Oh, yeah.
Do that right now.
Well, shouldn't we do that, or? we'll
No, I
just-
don't, we're not doing that as a team. We're just doing that. I don't think we need to do that.
Okay. You can take a shot at it over there.
Well,
Maybe
I
I'll
think
look at it
we
too.
did the
We can
first
do
one.
it and not talk about it until we're back in session.
I don't want to talk about it. I really don't. It's just not warranted.
Well, maybe.
Surface.
Right, I just wanted to,
He saw me once, but I don't know.
so I just wanted to make it perfectly clear for Shane, duties on them to, and him, to demonstrate that they will have a dry home in the future. It's not us, it's not.
Yeah,
Oh, I don't know.
expects good.
I know, I don't know if that's what the reason, but that's what they have. This is, I
Or
suspect.
either may affect or
That's
could
why I
affect,
said what I
either.
did.
And then
Careful
just
about
get
what
rid
you-
of the
what you support.
Yeah, I just crossed that
Yeah.
whole part out.
And then-
Complete streets, which was a grant to the
That's fine.
public.
I-
That they're planning.
Yeah.
And then. Make whatever edits in the beginning.
Yeah,
That you
same
made on
thing.
that.
Okay.
And then here, again. And then just get rid of all this stuff. This is-
The 200.
And then, and then, that's fine. Okay.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Where are we?
Okay, we are back in session, and...
Maybe general chemical update?
Oh, yes, general chemical was the
Oh.
question before us, so, okay.
Want me to?
Oh, the one thing I was going to mention earlier is I was not fully appreciating their not wanting to test wells that did not show VOC contamination in the past, because it's not the idea that this stuff is on the move or potentially on the move, and so why rule out things merely because they haven't shown something in the past?
I think you don't have to necessarily do all the ones that were ND, but I would do, like, spatially, I think I would suggest adding a few back in.
And they
to
may,
that well network.
and they may have to contact everyone eventually to get to that, if not everyone wants to participate. So,
Right,
as long as it doesn't, they only
It's
choose two,
flexible.
and the two say no, then go on to another two.
Right,
Something like that.
Yeah.
But you can describe what the issue is.
So apparently the DEP, there's been a few case managers for General Chemical at DEP, and now Chris Pyatt, who I know from other sites, is, quote, leading the task manager basically for DEP. And he's got a lot of energy. He seems like he drinks coffee a lot, and which is good. Better that way, right? And so now DEP happily is saying we want to go back out and test some of the private wells in Sherborn, because there was some initial testing done in 2012. Then there was a subset of testing done in November of 2015, and we haven't had any subsequent. I think there were a couple maybe in 2017, maybe like 3 or 4. Like I feel like on Horse Brook.
Yeah, I think there
Road.
was a second.
But for whatever reason, they didn't include them in this information, so I'm not sure. The data's been pretty consistent over time, de minimis to nothing. The very low levels of tetrachloroethylene that were found in some of the wells were at the same level in the blank. Which is just sort of saying, like, what's sort of when you run this on just like tap water, what are you, through the machines, and it's actually distilled water, are we still seeing PCE? And so the very low levels they saw in in some of these samples were pretty much identical to what they saw in this QA/QC blank sample. So it's unclear whether there was actually detected levels of.
Although part of the concern
PCE.
then is when they described the method that they collected the samples, they just opened taps, they filled
Yeah,
it up. I don't know if they used
Right.
BOA vials or not, so.
I don't have that
yeah,
information in this.
yeah.
I just have what the data is. I mean, I can tell you the data is, it's very, very low. But there were some detects, and so I think it makes a lot of sense to go back out there. It's been several years. Groundwater plumes migrate, and so just because there wasn't a significant issue in the last 2 rounds of testing doesn't mean that 5 years later that things couldn't have changed. So I think it's for verification that there's really not a significant impact to the private wells of Sherborn. It makes a lot of sense to test the wells. And
So the consultants who worked on this on the town's behalf in the past felt that, again, the protocol that they used would tend to off-gas the volat. One, just wasn't at the proper stage, hadn't been flushed, hadn't been run long enough to get to waters that might contain the volatiles, and then the handling of it, the
we can
speed
ask them
with
for
which
their
they went to
SOP
the-
and.
Right, that they had reviewed it at the time and reviewed it with DEP, I gather, but they didn't feel that it was good and that one would maximize capture of any VOCs that might have been there. So I think just
We'll just
checking
keep an
over
eye.
what they're doing,
Yeah.
would be great.
Yeah, and I mean, also, they're paying for it, so I don't know how much flex. They're proposing to test 18 properties. I will take a hard look at the ones they're omitting. They seem to be pretty much the ones they omitted last time. I probably have a pretty uphill battle to get them to start including things that were actually non-detect completely in the past. And I think they do have pretty good coverage, so I don't think it's the end of the world if I can't get them to, you know, I can start there, like, hey, why don't you just retest all of them? I seriously doubt they're gonna agree to that, but I can say, all right, well, it does seem like maybe there's a spatial gap here or here, so could you at least consider adding these two back in? Then comes the part of knocking on people's doors and sending them certified letters asking for their wells to be tested. And I would be shocked if there's 100% participation rate from these people. So, I mean, I've had really good luck at my sites convincing people to do it. But, you know, as we all know, in this town, there's, you know, historically, there's not going to be 100% acceptance of permitting sampling because it's private wells, and then you're in a whole other sort of scenario potentially if contamination is found at levels that require action, then you're in a whole other set of negotiations.
And that are a public record and all the rest.
So there's
No, it's
a
good
lot of,
information,
it's
but
good
it's still-
information, you would think you'd want to know. I mean, and things like point of entry treatment systems are, you can get them in very quickly, but then you have a system running and someone needs to sample your well for maybe perpetuity and change the carbon filters, and so there's a long tail of monitoring and actions if there's a problem. I think, of course, you would want to know if you have an issue, but that's me. So I'm just sort of setting the stage, preparing people that this is not going to be something that everybody's going to want DEP to do. They're probably not going to allow them in every single one, but hopefully we'll have a pretty good participation rate.
And I think it's especially tough when there's not a solution to the general chemical problem on the horizon, especially now that the cleanup contractor pulled out, in case everyone hadn't heard that. So.
Sigh. But so if I'm taking this on, do you want me to email Chris back and then CC you and Roger? Is that?
That would be okay with me. How does everyone else feel?
And me, if you.
And Ellen. Okay, so.
Because the town is looking for someone to communicate, and I don't think
Chris
anyone else has stepped up.
CC, Ellen, Daryl, Roger. Does that sound right?
Sure.
Okay. And then.
Or you could just send it to Ellen, you could send it out, or, I don't know.
It's fine too. It's up to you.
Either way.
It might be more efficient for me to just email Chris directly because he's going to want to talk about it, and so I don't.
Yeah.
Unless Ellen really wants to be in the middle of that.
Just copy me.
Oh, no, I agree. Yeah, I meant instead of
I'm
anyone
definitely
else on the
Oh,
board.
you mean just CC you, and then you can take care of.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
I'd
I
be okay
get
with
it,
that.
I think efficient and easy are good targets.
Okay, so I'll just CC Ellen, and then Ellen will make sure that the people who should be distributed to
Yeah.
are distributed. Okay. Sounds good. I can probably do it on Friday.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okey-dokey.
All right,
Oh,
now.
Any other questions on general chemical?
I don't think so. What, timing for this testing that you're talking
I
about?
don't know. I mean, first I gotta tell him, like, yes, we support this, and
Yeah.
could I throw in a few more houses, and then the ball's gonna be in their court to get the access agreements, and I'm gonna ask him to also send me like their SOP, their sampling. Should I ask to see the access agreement too, or no?
Yeah, if you, yeah.
I think
If you
so.
don't mind, just since you're familiar with that.
Okay.
Awesome. We only have 8 agenda items remaining. We're doing
Oh my
great.
gosh.
So Dover Board of Health, we received their letter. It doesn't seem like an accurate characterization of where we were.
No.
I would say.
They did not understand.
I think we can say, like, we're totally happy, like, I don't want to revisit vaccination, but I'm totally happy to talk
Too
about almost
exciting.
anything else. We just want to know what it is you're interested in talking about, as opposed to we only want to talk about EEE in the January meeting.
Yeah,
I wondered
But I think they're just, like, I think it's just
We
like.
emphasized it, and we said half an hour.
Yeah.
So we said, we clearly saw a lot of overlap with the EEE and with like the implications to the school.
Right.
But I remember saying very clearly,
We want
we
it
have a
done.
very good vaccination rate. That is not an issue for us. And I don't want to spend time talking about anti-vaxxers when it's really, the compliance rate is very, very high, especially in Sherborn. It's very high.
Well,
So,
what do you think did they say they want to talk about?
yeah, they
Well,
said it in a very
right.
obtuse way, like, and we want to talk about vaccination.
Well, I think it's just a question of, so I think we can just respond and say, totally happy to meet. Currently not interested in taking up vaccination as a primary topic, but certainly open to other agenda items.
Yeah, please let us know what you'd like to discuss, and
But I'm also happy to not meet. I'm happy to meet, I'm happy to not meet, but it's not, I only want to meet about Triple E, although I feel deeply about the mosquitoes.
I think, and I think ticks, that's fine too. Like,
I'm interested in what they have as an interest.
well, they
But then we
said,
could
they
go to
mentioned
their
ticks,
meeting.
which I'm
Like
fine
if they
with.
want to talk about vaccine, like I just
I
think
don't
like,
want to talk about
this is a
I
big
already-
topic with lots of, like again, big fan of vaccinations.
Yeah.
Enjoy not having like smallpox, or measles or mumps or like big fan. But I just feel like that's a big topic, and from our standpoint, and look, we haven't identified a big issue, and it's taken us like a long time to do other things.
This is
that are-
their language.
Okay,
So the other
Vaccination
issue too is, yes, it's waning, but if it comes in waves,
It'll
we
be
need
back
to
next
talk
year.
about it now, which is something that they felt very strongly about when we were meeting with the school over the norovirus. Just that idea of.
I wouldn't go back
now
and
is the
forth like.
time. No, okay,
Yeah.
so.
Like I would just say, we're happy to talk about other things. If they don't want to talk about Triple E, like I'm okay with them saying we don't want to talk about this. Just the way like my perception of risk of vaccines is low. I want to be able to have agents and say I don't want to talk about that. If their reciprocal
what do you
feeling
wanna
is
talk
Triple E is low and they don't want to talk about it, great. There's probably a universe of stuff we can talk about, even if we disagree with their assessment. I'm sure they disagree with our assessment.
I asked them what they wanted to talk about,
Yeah.
and this is what,
Right, and it was
Right.
ticks and
and
vax.
vaccinations.
I'm so happy to
Before
talk about
they had
ticks.
mentioned some joint grant, and I asked,
But
Is it
do we have
grant
to do
for
anything, or can we just be
and-
done?
they didn't know.
Like, I don't want to leave them with the impression that we only want to talk about Triple E, but I'm also happy to not have more meetings or more agenda items.
Right, and I think the other reason we're limiting it to one thing is.
We're giving, it's
So that-
half an hour.
Right, that's what would fit.
I don't think we should limit it to one
amount of
thing.
time.
I don't agree with that.
No, we didn't say we want to
I
limit it
think
to
no,
one thing. We said we want to know what the topics are.
We suggested
Find out what
triple E.
they're interested in, we find out why they want to meet, and there's nothing at all wrong with the meeting. That's my opinion.
But I think
I'm
like,
not going to talk about
right
vaccines.
now it's
I'm
9,
not
10.
going to do
You
it.
have to.
Well, that's one of the things they specifically mentioned. So as long
Repeatedly.
as they agree that that's not going to be part of this discussion.
Well, I think what we propose is like what are the agenda? One, I'm happy to not meet because we've got 9, 10, and we've got, I think, I'm revising my count to, I think, 10 agenda items left. Like, we've got a lot of stuff, and so I'm happy to not add new stuff that isn't directly in our regulatory purview. Like, I'm happy to not do that. I'm also happy to mutually identify topics of interest for a joint meeting that should be, hey, what are you guys interested in? Are we interested, yes or no? Here's what we're interested in. Are they interested, yes or no? If there are 3 topics in half an hour, great. But I've never had a
As long as
board.
we're very clear that
Would you want to go the other way and give them topics you would want to talk about?
I'm just so happy to also not talk. That like, none of us have been like, I don't have enough to do on Board of Health. I was hoping to add. Like,
I think, just say, we have a lot to cover. We have 2 meetings every month, and we have full agendas. So, come up with suggestions for something that we could manage in, a half an hour of additional time that we're willing to discuss mutually,
So should this,
Well, do you want
this
Pertinent
is something that you would
topics.
be comfortable writing, or should I just say
or
something
should
like?
we just ignore it for like 3 months and revisit? Because that letter was pretty loaded.
It was
and
snitty.
Well, I think they just feel frustrated. It's like, why do we can just not talk. It's worked for like lots of my family for years. You just don't talk. Just, Thanksgiving you come up. Like
Like
that.
to like go to a meeting and then report back or something?
No, I'm totally happy
Oh,
to
no,
not
no.
talk. I would just say like give it 3 months. Like they're frustrated. There's nothing urgent. Revisit in the spring and say, hey, we wanted to check in.
Okay.
That's pretty passive aggressive.
No, but like they said, we're sorry you don't want to meet or talk about anything. And we're like, That's not what we said, but I've never had like the third letter in the chain where everybody was suddenly like, I've got resolution and I'm no longer angry. Like, I think just leave it go. Unless we've got some agenda we want to affirmatively move forward by this meeting, which I don't think we do. I think they asked about having a joint meeting. We said these are kind of the parameters we'd be interested in that in. I don't think what they're responding to doesn't feel like it was what our intent was
Also,
to
if
communicate.
they thought that the meeting between us was just between, only business between the two boards and on one topic, I could see, so maybe they completely misunderstood
I think
our
they did.
schedule,
Yeah.
and we don't have a whole meeting to devote
No, I don't
to
think.
anything open-ended, so, all right, so if you're okay, if at some point later in December or something, I can think of, just writing back to make it clear that we're not saying that's the only thing, although I do think now, sooner than waiting till next summer when it might be a threat again and you're scrambling, might be a thing to do. Also to reiterate that it would just be one piece of our regular meeting, which are usually quite full, something. And it sounds like the only topic that's a big no is the vaccination, just because we don't see the information as being compelling to look at that. Is that, so I'm understanding?
I'm not deeply invested in not talking about it. I just don't think it's useful. It's not my core principle of like, I never think vaccines should be discussed. It's just like,
Right.
I don't, like, that's not how I'd spend it.
That's not a good use of our time.
It's not the priority.
And there's been no alert that we have a compliance issue based on the data I've seen from the schools. There's no indication of lack of compliance.
I also
so
feel like
maybe
that
I'll
would then
just-
also be a school committee, Board of Health meeting, not just Board of Health meeting with each other.
I'm
Right, like-
completely not in agreement with any of you guys.
Okay,
I
so
don't think
say what
there's
you
any
think.
reason we can't meet with them, and
No, we
They-
didn't
they-
say,
they-
we didn't
no,
say
they-
that.
they said
That's
they
how
don't wanna meet with
So
us.
you're not understanding.
Like, did you read the letter?
We understand, but you're not
I'm just saying,
understanding.
I don't
It'll
agree.
help
I
us
think- I'm
understand
interested
that.
in why they want to meet. They have never
We've
wanted to
discussed
meet.
that
Nobody
over several meetings,
Yes.
about how they want to meet and the topics they want to meet
I
on.
know it doesn't sound that offensive to me, but it
No,
sounds
we're
like-
not saying
no,
it's
we
offensive.
literally
We're
said-
saying, we can't say come, and we'll spend 2.5 hours talking about a lot of things. We can allocate
The
a certain
members of the
amount of
Dover
time
Board
if
of
we wanna
Health
get out of here
understood
before
that
midnight.
response to imply that the only issue the Sherborn Board of Health wished to discuss in any such combined meeting was triple E. So that's not what we communicated. All the members of the Dover Board of Health expressed their disappointment in that response, believing, so totally happy to have things of other pieces. But I'm also like, this is a letter written by somebody who's frustrated. Right. And so, again, I am happy to
Okay,
meet.
so
I'm-
given that information, what do you still see as a gap? Because it would help us understand what they are.
It's not, it doesn't matter. I just don't feel the same way. So it doesn't matter. You guys feel the same way, and I don't agree with you.
No, but I don't care about this in any deep level whatsoever.
I'm interested in hearing what they are worried about vaccines, whether or not we have good rate.
So,
We have to
wait,
deal
do you
with
want to
the
reach
people
out to the
who object.
Dover Board of Health to
I think
understand
they're
more about that
difficult
topic,
to-
Rebecca?
Actually, why don't,
Like,
let's.
do you want to reach out to the Dover Board of Health to understand more and to explore that topic, and then we can figure out and bring back to this group?
Right.
Because
I mean,
I,
if you guys are opposed to that.
no, we're totally open. We're suggesting
The
you,
information that we have so far
Yeah.
suggests that there are 2 students who are not vaccinated, which is
Out of
completely
Pine Hill.
Yeah.
But it's their choice.
Right,
No,
so
but
we're
so-
saying, it's not an issue. What we're saying is, we don't want to
but
do
I
a
said,
very
Rebecca,
low number.
if you disagree with it,
Yeah.
call it, like, I'm not saying I don't ever think Board of Health should talk about vaccines. I'm saying, based on my review of the data, I don't think there's a public health
It's
issue
not a problem.
from my point of view.
I
But why don't you talk to the
really
Dover Board?
know
But talk to the
why
board.
they want to meet.
So call them, and that's
Yeah,
like,
so
if,
I'm kind of curious why they want to meet.
They
So as an action item,
that's
will
what
you
was
con-
mentioned, and
Yeah.
things that are here, told you they want to talk about
Yeah.
tick management programs, but.
so Rebecca, can we
Be
charge,
all
you?
in
Can we
all
charge you?
management.
But what I'd say is like,
So-
let's just say, like, it sounds like you're really
Yeah.
enthusiastic about this. Why don't you talk to
I don't
Dover?
know if I go that far.
Sure.
But I think like, I'm not saying I'm opposed to meeting with them. I want to manage a scope because it's 9:15. And we
Right,
said,
no, I agree with you.
so why don't,
100%.
so
And
if you
we-
feel okay with saying, I will reach out to Dover Board of Health to understand this, because it sounds like the letter communication's tricky.
Yeah.
And then you can circle back to us to kind of say, hey, this was what they were interested in. When I look at it with my perspective, these are the things that I think represent a good chance to talk. These are the things that resonate less. let's figure out next steps. Does that
And
sound like
see
a
if you
good?
can get them to understand, we didn't say one meeting,
I wouldn't-
one
I wouldn't-
subject. We said, start with, have a half hour at one of our meetings. Would
And I
that
would
be
even-
okay with you? They said yes at first, then we gave dates, and then we fell apart.
But I would just say, like,
That's, it's not a, let's get together and jaw for as many hours on every topic. Let's
I
break
think
it
we
up
should,
into
I think it's,
pieces.
I've been to their meetings, I don't even know who's on.
Yes,
no, I haven't been to the meetings, but I'd
Talk
say,
to Gerald, he knows.
yeah.
There's a doctor.
That was over the legislation project that I was working on.
But I'd say, like, if you don't want to do it, then I think you're the most interested person on our board of pursuing this. And so if you're like, it's not at a place where I want to make a phone call, then I think that speaks to we're not
Sure,
there.
I'd be happy to make a
And
phone
I've
call.
had multiple discussions.
Perfect.
You know, so it's
All
not
right.
working
Oh,
out.
Fields at
But I
Sherborn?
think the last written communications didn't,
Fields at
they
Sherborn?
didn't read it the way we intended.
Okay, and
That's
I
what
also
I'm
don't know how much
guessing from
communication
this.
is going on besides that one letter, so sorry.
No worries. Fields at Sherborn, public.
Yes. So, Mark, do you want to tell us about?
Yeah, the Fields of Sherborn, excuse me. I'm getting a sore throat, I think. Stay away from it. They've been working to get their certificate of compliance. They still have a couple things that were pending, which they're anxiously, which they're actually submitting as we speak. In fact, even today, they submitted more information. I'm gonna have to do a field inspection of some of the items. They're showing me pictures, but pictures, I need to visualize it too. And so I'll be sending the owner a notice to that. A couple things that were missing were, well, one, they had a sewer manhole covered over with pavement, so they show a picture now with it unpaved. They had some areas that needed to be adjusted, and when I went down there, I took a break in between soil testing Saturday and saw some of these issues and reported it to the owner, Ben Stevens. So once those get correct, sounds like he's pretty close, if not there. I can do the inspections of the units, but their final grade as-built did not certify the retaining wall. So that had to be in before I could do the actual house inspections. This was like a pre-inspection on Saturday. The reason I bring it up, seems like the owner's concerned I didn't call him. I just had time to go down quickly to look around and get back to him with some notes, but, you know, he's just starting to ask for it, and he didn't have his information fully submitted, so I will plan, if it works with his schedule, to be out there Friday afternoon to do my final inspections. And hopefully, I didn't see power on the pump alarms, nor did I see that they were activated, but he says they were, so he can show me why, when you turn the test button, why the alarms don't go off. Maybe they put the circuitry in since Saturday, who knows. So hopefully,
Okay,
in
so
their potable water
they
is.
have a list of things that were deficient
Yeah.
that they could hopefully address.
And I sent it in writing to him yesterday, and hopefully he'll have, or Monday even, I can't remember the day, but it might have been yesterday, so hopefully he'll have that all completed, and the potable water was approved by the state. We received that document, yes, that's what I was waiting for before I sent final information to him, was that document. We received the potable water document from the state, the hard copy, so he's almost there for the first couple units, and he's sent a picture showing a new placard, basically, for the garbage grinder. It looks like a bumper sticker. I'll see if it's laminated so they'll survive. He is working to finalize the needs.
Okay.
It was more about the public water supply, but that has been approved by the state.
If it's been approved by the state and the testing's underway and
Yep.
whatever the schedule is, and it's, the usual is that when they're sending in test results to the state, that they copy the town, so hopefully we'll start seeing those for that.
That would be good.
You know, I forgot food inspector position. I crossed it off my list ahead of time.
I looked at the resume. The resume.
Right, so this would be the one resume we got. But I would say, lucky us, the person appears to have the qualifications we need.
And he looks like he's doing health inspection in the city of Boston. If you can do city of Boston, I'm
Yeah.
feeling pretty good about here.
So thing is, so I think since, where did it come up? There was a recent meeting where they were discussing interviewing. And so it is actually appropriate to have.
MAHB.
Okay.
MAHB.
MAHB was talking about, right, to have executive session for interviewing people. So I think maybe, do we want to set up for one of our meetings, maybe not the next one?
I'm cheerfully flexible if we need to proceed without me, just because I don't have strong independent opinions. I expected to be escorted from the larger board.
All right. So then maybe, shall we look into when this person, what meeting they might attend, and perhaps we can have an executive session for an interview as part of that?
Sure.
So, because we do have things going on, we did get notice about something at there are matters, you're taking care of it now, but there are things that would be
It
good
would
to have
be
the
so
food
nice to
inspector
fill the
here.
position as expediently as possible.
Yes,
Like,
I'd be very flexible. I mean, this guy's resume looks very, very, very comprehensive, robust.
And what I liked is that he's worked
both
as a preparer of
Restaurants
food,
and-
so
yeah,
his
yeah.
ability to relate to what people are going
Absolutely.
through.
No,
sounds-
he seems great. Like,
Yeah.
I'm ready to hire him.
And the
I'd
camps.
suggest that highly.
So,
Yeah.
okay,
Perfect.
so
All right.
let's, if you
Works for
can,
me.
Oh, right, absolutely.
contact him and see if he can attend one of our meetings, and then let's,
Like, as soon as possible.
figuring out how we're
So
gonna do an
December-
executive session or whatever.
December.
November 20th?
Next Wednesday.
Would that,
He
Yeah.
can't, he can't be here next Wednesday until 7:30, because has training in one of his other areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
but 7:30.
But you could.
He could be
Yeah.
here at 7:30, just,
Oh, okay.
I know his schedule
Starts
pretty
at
well next
7.
week.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that would be perfect.
Would you want it?
But I
You
think,
will want-
how big is the agenda for next week? Like, it'll be ledge discussion, but how much spice can we get
This
in it?
is the agenda for next week. There's
Right.
nothing on it.
So I think update with ledge, since David will be
The-
here,
the
and then I think
minutes.
then you could go to executive session. And so you could probably do
Yeah.
him by like 8 or 8:30.
Okay, yeah, see what he's agreeable to, and,
Would he be able to be here by 8,
Yep,
7:30?
yep.
okay.
8 o'clock, I'd say 8 o'clock to be on the safe side.
8 o'clock.
And the reason I know his schedule, he works for me part-time for full disclosure. Not for me personally, but for the town of
Absolutely.
Ashland. I'm his supervisor.
Oh,
Sounds good.
Okay, great.
And I
Cool.
would recommend him highly for this board for food inspections. He's very good at what he does.
Yeah, this
Speaking-
was,
Speaking of inspections,
More
the
than I
lockup, rusty toilets.
ah,
Yes.
I feel like, didn't we get the same thing last year with like,
Yes.
The mall is,
yes, I was surprised, like, is that, I don't know, well,
Who would be responsible for
the chief,
making
right?
the changes happen? Chief?
chief, or, yeah, I would think somehow, and then getting authorization to spend some money to address it, money and/or time, I don't know.
Yeah,
So-
that is correct. It's the police chief that usually responds, or the town administrator or manager.
So is there anything that we should do regarding this? I mean, it,
You may want to ask to be copied on a response from your town officials. The state will respond to you, though. I just saw one of these in another location, not here. And if they don't let you know what they did, the state will. The state will respond on the actions taken and carbon copy the Board of Health.
So,
okay.
but can we request from Chief Thompson just to say, please keep us in the loop for the plans for remediation?
Are we going to do anything about any of them? I mean, do
I don't-
we?
I mean, I
Well, the
think-
state will enforce that, not us.
Okay.
It's the state's responsibility
Okay.
to make sure.
So we're
that-
just sort of requesting, please keep us in the loop.
Yeah, how did we get this?
it just comes on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, no, it's Board of Health electronic copy.
All right.
We get it every year.
flu clinic report.
So do you want,
Oh,
on this one, do you want me to ask the chief for a copy of his response, or
Or just like if there's,
ask the state?
I mean, or ask the chief, do you need anything from Board of Health in preparing a response? I think the answer is no, but it's just like, if we get one part of it,
Yeah, I don't even know that we can make that offer.
yeah. Well, so do we
Because I
just
don't know
leave it
what I
go
would
for
say
to
about painting.
Yeah, I'm not great at it, but
I'm good at painting, but I'm
yeah.
not.
If I were locked in and that was the way to get unlocked, I'd be really motivated. Or do we need to do anything? Like, if the state's a regulatory body, I don't know that we need to craft a response at all.
Right.
But
And
like,
if
why
they're
does-
going to copy us on whatever comes
Yeah,
to them
if
next,
that-
then that's the
Okay.
Leave it
normal
go.
procedure.
Just
Let's let
notice
that
Leave it go.
flow
Okay.
and not have anyone adding
Yeah.
to what their normal
Perfect.
routine is. Okay.
Speak of,
Did you want these, since they were given to us, right, at the meeting?
Oh, okay.
So, okay, so we did that, we did, and,
what about the giant pile of manure?
yeah, that was pretty
That's
exciting.
nasty.
That's a big pile.
Not to mention, we have
There was
manure
others.
pile rules in Sherborn,
Yeah.
which I don't have all at my
And
fingertips, but has to do with how much
Beth was
volume
very
you could
clear
have.
about what needed to be done, and nothing was done. So now what?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, what?
Well, so I think the state's pulling their permit, right? Or we'll pull it.
Yes, but then the issue is, they may be in violation of the town's,
So do we send a town letter as well?
I did talk
Yeah, I think we
to
need
Kim
to look.
Morrow
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Oh,
is
good.
several times
Okay.
on it. She did say that when she was there, the large pile was removed, and they were working on finding options to continue to remove the manure from the property on a more regular basis.
Like, so proper manure management?
Yes, but she did say they did have someone removing it weekly before, and it was Scott Mayo. But since he passed away, that's why
Okay,
they were
it
having
built up.
trouble.
Okay.
So the large pile had been removed, they were looking at options.
So,
And did she see it after October 21st?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes,
sends a letter from.
She said she didn't get, I actually sent the letter to Kim, and I said, you probably got this, but, and she goes, this is the first I see it, but it makes sense to me now that when she went to do her inspection, they immediately took her out to where the manure pile was to show her that it was, way down, and it wasn't like, and she said, now this makes much more sense to me what was going on.
Why they were so excited to show me their manure pile.
Yeah.
So I wonder, I honestly don't remember who is supposed to enforce our manure management. Have we done that in the past?
I've done it in the past.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But is it specified for us, or is it
I
anybody who
cite 'em
happens
under-
to be out
yeah.
there for any reason?
Usually, I don't have to cite them because we discuss general nuisances.
Okay.
If they have a right to have a manure pile, but they have to manage it properly,
Right.
which means
We had some,
mixing
I
it.
think in the bylaw, there's a distance
Yes.
from wells
Groundwater,
and, and other things.
management.
Yeah.
But in most cases, they will comply, like I said, they
I think
have a
people
right
want
to
to
have
comply.
one.
Yeah.
They just have to manage it and every so often remove it, but some of the complaints I'll get are related to not having proper mixture of hay or wood chips within it to properly mulch it while it's on site. But I have to say, maybe the 5 cases I've had over the years, they work with us. They
Okay.
usually just have an issue that they have to find a new vendor in one
Temporary,
case. Yeah, they usually will work with us.
Okay, so is Kim, I don't know, how often does she go out? Is this something we have to keep up with to make sure it doesn't just build up again, or? I don't know.
Unless the state is doing that.
Oh.
now.
well, it
Yeah,
makes
maybe
it
they
sound
would
like the
do that.
state was gonna do a
They're going back.
reinspection,
All right.
and then and then if it looks okay, they're going to issue
Issue the-
the license.
Yeah, they don't.
Okay.
And if it's not, then they're gonna revoke it or, suspend it, so.
Okay. Oh, all right.
So speaking of horses, there's the resident concern for the Triple E update, but I think we now say.
I'm not concerned.
I think we're both not concerned, given the current temperatures, and then also at the time of the escalation, we couldn't identify any other, like, it's unclear what the source of the.
I don't know what she was talking about. There was no reports of any
Right.
additional
No.
cases
So
in
I think
Medfield,
it-
so I don't even, I
Yeah.
think that
So,
was,
check.
yeah,
Per-
so
check.
it's not.
So
I'm
just-
checking it off right
They're
now.
not
Or
responding.
she
Nope.
found it like
Receipt of
a
her-
month.
Well,
Yep.
she does say, does the Board of Health have a plan to restore the brook flow? Well, do we ever make
No.
plans to restore brook flow
Yeah.
as a board?
To restore brook flow?
That doesn't sound like that's in our,
Well,
Yeah,
you have
necessarily.
Central Mass Mosquito Control, and they do dredging as part of their initiative,
And she
integrated
can
pest
contact
management.
them.
right,
I don't see us as a dredging body.
no.
That would be your
I think we're-
county mosquito program will do that for you.
Right. So I think the response is Board of Health doesn't have a plan to dredge.
So
Well, first of all,
Maybe we-
mosquitoes dead now.
Right.
Mosquitoes are all dead.
But they could call Central Mass Mosquito, and they will put it on their list to clean out the stream or wherever the flow of water is needed.
But it seemed, like she reported something in Medfield, right? It didn't, like, nothing really hung together in that whole.
So Medfield, I don't know if they have a county mosquito program. If they do, it's not central. it's
No, but
probably
she was
not.
like acting like this was in response to a
Another-
recent
another
case,
case.
Okay.
and I could find no documentation.
all right, so,
Check.
It's not in
all
here.
right, this has been a while.
We're done.
They're dead now anyway.
Leave it go.
Okay.
Okay, but someone has
Yes.
written into the
written right here,
board
Central Mass
asking
Mosquito.
questions. I could see saying there were, we received no reports of additional cases in Medfield, and the Board of Health does not restore brook flows or something.
Right.
It's not in charge of something.
Please contact blah, blah.
The Central Mass.
Please
Well,
contact.
she's already aware of the Central Mass Mosquito Control.
But I think the point of
She's-
Mark's point.
She's asking us, so
Right.
she clearly doesn't
Okay.
understand what they do.
Yeah, so
Why don't
she,
you do that
Yeah.
and say, right.
She may be wondering if they should get a mosquito control program. That might be it.
Unclear.
speaking of viruses, flu clinic and vaccines, this is really a nice segue.
Nice numbers.
Beautifully done.
People who
Lower-
love vaccination.
Lower
out-
than previous years. I did 2 clinics this year because senior citizens don't really like to come out at night. So we did it during the day, and 37.
That's pretty good.
Which is good. And then 84 came to the one at St. Teresa's, which is good, but in total, the numbers were down.
But
I didn't
Walgreens
get-
is right there and they
That's
do
right.
it for free. And like, you
That's
literally
right.
go and you
And
fill
you
a
can get it-
prescription, they're like,
Yeah.
have you had your flu shot? I'm like,
That's right.
not yet. They're like, sit down. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It's
And
true,
then
right,
a lot
right,
of
good
seniors
about that.
want the high-dose flu vaccine, and we don't buy that because it's more expensive.
And this is also our test run for the emergency dispensing center, and so
Right.
even, like, if the reality is
Yeah.
it's really easy to get vaccines and lots of people have convenient ways to do it, that's great.
Yeah.
We're offering a service for people who want it, and we're
Yeah,
testing our
and-
system.
Yeah. So it
Awesome,
went-
thank you for your hard work.
Went
Yeah, thanks.
very well.
Speaking of healthcare, Sharps disposal,
Why are we talking about that?
do we need to make the budget request for the Sharps
Yeah, we'll
disposal?
include that in our budget request. It looks like at the moment, without going into every detail on the budget, is we'll probably have any known price increases. Phone if we know of that or something. And there's the cost of living increase for salaries. We could include that. And then this will be the only new thing at the moment. And public safety supported the idea of having it, and also having it at the police station and the DPW and Well, the fire department really didn't want it there.
I guess
Doesn't fit. And it makes sense at the police station, and I spoke with someone at DPH, and they thought that was the perfect spot for it, just because you get the coverage of as well. So.
I guess one piece that, like, we sort of talked about it, and then I think after she left, we sort of looked and we're like, wow, leasing is basically as expensive as buying.
Mm.
So for us, like, I don't know, is that something we need to pin down for the budget?
Yeah, we will
Yeah.
need to, if somebody wants to mull that over, I don't know. Or
There's
we
a- I
can
did-
just talk about it
Yeah.
next week.
That sounds perfect. Next
Yeah,
week on the
right.
agenda. No, but I think like it's a question of like, I think that what we got with the lease option was more vendor support, but I think the general goal for Sherborn is frugality wherever possible.
Yeah.
And it seems like if this is a multi-year strategy, then having the purchase and service plan may be cheaper. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I think that's like,
Yeah, and maybe that's something we can discuss with the advisory person and where they see risk. Would they rather have something that we're just leasing and can upgrade or whatever else can happen?
Do you have
Or
a
do we want to buy it?
medicine take-back kiosk?
Yes, it's at the police station, so
That's
this
the
would fit
best
right next to
place,
it. It's about the same
yeah.
size.
Perfect. That's what other towns do.
And the only other thing we'll have to see is, you know, if it's in the police station, they do usually ask what you're in for, so to speak, and whether, because this will get posted as Sherborn having a drop-off location, and whether we're concerned about.
I feel great about the police
another
station.
tenant.
I know.
No, but I would say from my standpoint, like, I don't remember us having a differential cost, so if like a Medfield resident came and dropped off Sharps, I don't know that that will
If
cost
it
us any
fills
more
up
money.
faster, we
Then it-
will
right.
pay for hauling away more
But like,
often.
I would, like, if I were going to Medfield to drop it off, and it's like, are you gonna go in the police station to drop off? Like, again, like, all these things are kind of incentives, I think, for people to be using it appropriately, and so, like, a police station
I
feels
can
very
tell you, I
efficient.
can probably fill it up right away with all the sharps from
The flu vac, yeah.
over several years that are in the trailer. I can get rid of them, but
Oh.
That would be great.
it's gonna
Yeah.
be, I'll fill it up
like
right
Santa.
away.
Right, yeah. Santa
No, but
with
that's,
sharps.
but I get,
That's
but
okay.
but I think
Yeah.
it, right, and so,
Do you want to have little sharps container yourself?
no, I think you like, you
No,
just,
no.
no.
Ellen, you can ask that company what it would cost to bring a box that's
To just do a
glass.
one-off.
And you
Yeah.
just,
Oh,
it's
just
tall, it's
fill
about
it.
that tall, throw them all in there,
So
they come and get it.
So I like that, let's start with
Yeah.
that piece to just say, hey, let's clear out our Sharp collection.
Yeah.
And then let's do we can get guidance from advisory about the lease versus buy. And they may or may not support it, right? Like, they may say, we don't want to spend this money. Perfect, so I think we're down to, I just see warrants and payroll.
Yeah.
Does that line out for everybody else?
Yes, so, Rick, we're just doing the paperwork portion of our
So in terms
meeting,
of,
so.
so in
you
terms,
can
in terms of the
conclude
letter.
And here's some more plans.
So we've kind of made edits to the letter, we're good to go, we'll have that to Gino.
Yes, so
Perfect.